your guide to the truth. TheNewAmericanMedia.com.
Broadcasting to you live from the Milky Way Galaxy, the solar system, planet Earth, North America, the United States of America, California, Los Angeles to be specific. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Agree to Disagree here on the TNAM radio network here at thenewamericanmedia.com. We're doing the job that the old American media, maybe they never really did anyway. I mean, back to the days of yellow journalism and pamphleteering in the revolutionary times, the media's always been pushing something. They've always had their own agenda. What's mine? What is my agenda? Well, I would probably describe myself as fiscally conservative. I was raised that you don't put money on credit cards if you don't have the money in the bank to send them a check to pay it in full. That's what Dave Ramsey teaches. What's the phrase he uses? The borrower is slave to the lender. Yeah, that's a biblical quote. It's just good common sense. Don't overextend yourself. Don't put yourself in a position where you're ridiculously in debt. I don't think that's an unreasonable political philosophy to have. However, what are we at? 18, 19, 20 trillion? Who can even keep track of all these trillions anymore? Yeah, it's pretty disgusting. Socially, I'm libertarian. It's close to libertarian is probably the closest thing to what I believe or where I stand on a lot of the social issues. Personally, I've kind of reached a point where I accept that a lot of social things are going to be the way they're going to be, and we're just going to have to go more libertarian on that. We each have our own book. It's a choose your own adventure. Not all of us pick the same next page to go to. And I think to govern a country this large, I think that's kind of the only way you can do it. It doesn't mean I don't have personal opinions on a lot of social issues, but when it comes down to it, I think the way to govern, it's really just got to be libertarian. And then capitalist. Not crony capitalist, not fascist, the blending of corporations with government. I don't think we've had anything close to capitalist in the United States in a very long time. Some people say 100 years, some say we never have. Once again, it goes back to kind of how my parents and grandparents raised me. It was, work hard. Work hard, don't spend money you don't have, and put yourself in a good position so you can take care of yourself. And if you want to go do things or get things, and make sure you pay them off instantly. And I believe in work ethic. I believe that if you're bringing talent to the table, you really need to, I think that is, it has to be a separator between different people on this planet. Not everybody's born with the same background. Not everybody's born with the same advantages or disadvantages. Not everybody is born with the same talents. What makes America, at least theoretically, what makes America awesome is that this is a place where if you work hard, if you bust your ass, you're going to get somewhere. You're going to be able to take care of yourself. In a lot of ways, this system is unfortunately rigged currently. And that's where people like Bernie Sanders, people like, just face it, a lot of the Democrats, a lot of Barack Obama supporters, it's not ask what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. It's, well, hey, what's my country going to give me? Where's my peace? I think you need to make that, you need to go out and get your peace. And you need to work hard to do it. All of these quick fixes, the scams and the scandals and the theft and that stuff's no good. But, I think capitalism is a system where hard work is rewarded, and those that work harder do better. I have a hard time looking around and wanting to help people that aren't willing to help themselves. Have a hard time. I've always had a hard time with that. I think there needs to be some sort of compassion given to those that are mentally ill and physically disabled, and especially our returning war veterans. But other than that, I don't have a ton of I'm not compelled to feel bad for people that put themselves into bad positions. You can't make bad decisions and expect to live well. Benjamin Franklin said the best way to help somebody in poverty is to make them feel uncomfortable in their poverty. And there's a little bit of truth to that. But anyway, philosophically, fiscally conservative, socially libertarian, pro-capitalist, not crony capitalist or fascist. That's generally what we do here at the New American Media. That's generally what we're about. Kind of maximum freedom, but it's those topics and more that we cover on Agree to Disagree. And today we're going to be joined by journalist Ford Fischer, who was at the Million Mask March yesterday. Remember the 5th of November. And that's going on. But, when I'm not talking politics, I also do a sports radio show. It's called The Unhappy Hour. So check out all the places where we have content. Our homepage is thenewamericanmedia.com. On the right-hand side, TNAM Radio. You click play to listen live. Underneath that is our Facebook feed and our Twitter feed. On Twitter, we're at American_media_, so follow us. And then like our page on Facebook, or you could do a search for The New American Media with spaces in between. and we'll tweet out, and we'll put something on Facebook when we do our live shows, because they're not always the same time of day. We're not syndicated the same way where you're used to just tuning in or you open up your podcast and we're sitting there. We do our shows live when we do them live, and of course then we put them on our homepage and then on YouTube, as well as Twitter and Facebook. So subscribe to youtube.com/The New American Media. We got 4.5 years of content, so check out a lot of the interesting conversations that we've had over the years, because some really good stuff. It's interesting. You look back on 4.5 years, almost half a decade, and it's amazing to think of where we started, where we're at today. Just over 520,000 video views after the fact on YouTube, and that's one of the ways that we keep track of the analytics of what we're up to. 17,000 or something on Twitter, and getting the Facebook page going. There's a lot of good content there, so check it out. One of the shows we definitely had Ford Fischer on before, and we want to bring him back today because this Million Mask March thing is an interesting event that happens November 5th, and we want to talk about it. So let's get him in. I love the suspense when the phone rings.
Hello?
Hello, Ford. It's Brian Engelman, and you're live on the air. How you doing, sir?
Doing quite well. How are you?
Living the dream, of course. Good to have you back on the program. It's been a little while, and I kind of wait to bring in the guest before I do the intros. I think it's more fun as opposed to just reading off something that someone wrote on a bio 3 years ago and forgot to update. But Ford is the co-founder, executive producer, and managing editor of News to Share, and you are also affiliated with the Solutions Institute. So let's just start from the beginning right there. Kind of reintroduce yourself to everybody and tell them what you've been up to.
Sure. So like you said, I am the co-founder and managing editor of News to Share. So I was present at the Million Mask March, which we'll be discussing, from the night before, seeing all of the preparation, tactics, sort of celebration, and everything like that for the march, all the way into the following day, which was yesterday, Guy Fawkes Day. And so I was there both as a journalist and also as sort of a observer, in a sense, which is part of the role of being a journalist. But for the sake of Solutions Institute, which is a network, a nonprofit network advising firm that advises for activists, giving them basically advice, writing about activism news. So specifically, my role there was basically watching from a media standpoint how the protesters, how the participants dealt with it media-wise. So I will be writing a article for Solutions Institute as well that will be a little bit more opinion-based, but describing kind of lessons learned, or how what I would suggest sort of for activists relative to how the Million Mask March was handled. So I was there mostly on behalf of News to Share, but it should have outcomes for both organizations.
Yeah, and in full disclosure, that is how I met Mr. Ford Fischer. I am also an advisor at the Solutions Institute. In fact, one of the feathers in my cap was I gave the very first lecture in the ActCon series. What are we on now? 3 of those? 4 of those coming up?
There have been 3 of them, and the 4th one I believe will be in January or February. And I was also a speaker on ActCon 1, although you did come before me. That's right.
Yeah, it was a let's just say a slightly less than desirable time slot over here on the left coast, being 3 hours behind everybody on the East Coast. But oh yeah, it was that was held on the day there was what was that? Wow, I'm having a moment here. With George Norrie and everybody at the Conscious Life Expo. That was going on the same day, and that's why I actually pulled out of my role. I was helping put the event together, and I said, crap, it's on the worst possible day. So yeah, I remember I kind of drew the short straw and was the first speaker. But yeah, that was a lot of fun, and I think there are a lot of people, a lot of activists, a lot of people that you click through your daily outrage, your daily dose of outrage on Twitter and mostly Facebook, and did you see this that happened? Did you see this cop did so and so? And I saw another one today. One of our contributors put it on our Facebook page, and I just went, I don't even have the stomach for this today. Maybe I'll get to this later. I just, but it's a daily dose of outrage, and there are people that are activists, and they want to do something. They see a bad system and go, I want things to be better. Sometimes they have good solutions, sometimes they don't, and they devolve into violence and in this type of thing. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people that are probably. Let me phrase this as a question: would you agree that there are more activists today than at any other time in American history because of social media?
Because of social media. I think that social media definitely enables more people to be involved in activism. I think, though, that there is a bit of a fork in the road in terms of whether or not that's a good thing. Of course, it helps in terms of coordination, and it makes it easier to get involved. So by that measure, yes, you certainly have more people who are activisting, who are getting involved, who are talking about politics, who are getting educated about these things. At the same time, I would note that social media may have a slight deteriorating effect on the individual power of activism, in the sense that many people will get into this, what I would call a hashtagism, where somebody says, I'm really passionate about this topic, and then the extent of their work on that is sharing a photo or tweeting #NotAllMen, and that's about all they have to say about it, right? So I think when people increasingly sort of live in online spaces, sometimes they tend to activist in online spaces, and when you have people ending up in these, tunnels of groupthink where, you have people who are only talking with people who are like-minded, right, that activism doesn't reach out as much, whereas on the ground activism, everybody can kind of see it. So I think, yes, the short answer is yes, there are more activists because of the internet, but at the same time, activism might be a little bit diluted because of the internet.
Yeah, hashtivism or hacktivism. I love the phrase hacktivism.
Yes, hacktivism is another story entirely. Yeah, I can talk about that too.
Well, with Anonymous and the Million Mask March with Guy Fawkes and remember the 5th of November, sure, it's a good time. But hashtivism and hacktivism, I like these word blends. I'm going to have to make sure I incorporate hashtivism. But no, I would say also, and I agree with your point on social media. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It's the best of technology, and it's also the sewer-dwelling gutter rats who live in their mom's basement running their mouth about things they don't know the facts on. So it's kind of... it's a mixed bag for sure, but something interesting, because Ford, we had you on the program several months ago in Baltimore. You happened to be over there, right, when the city started burning. People were angry about Freddie Gray, and things were built up and pumped up from Mike Brown and Trayvon Martin. It seems like anytime somebody is killed, and especially if there's a police officer involved, especially if the person who loses their life is black, and especially if the person who loses their life is black and the cop is white, or white Hispanic, as they called George Zimmerman, these things are just grabbed by the left, and they just run with it, and things kind of get a little out of control. But you were there in Baltimore for that, and it reminded me, I was just thinking of that as you were kind of talking about social media, because when you got arrested, that made for good TV. I got to say that. But you know, it's a fine line, Ford, between being an activist and being a journalist, and sometimes they kind of happen at the same time, because I remember going out to Bundy Ranch, and I mean, they literally had snipers up in the mountains. They were pointing, this is where the helicopter came over, this is where the cars are, and if you haven't seen the footage of that, it's just astonishing at the end when they face down the BLM and get their cattle back. But, when you're out covering a story, you don't want to become a part of the story, but in a way you are, because your presence there has now added a different level of relevance. And I think a lot of people went out to the Bundy Ranch to keep the BLM from blowing these people away, quite honestly. I think the more cameras that were there, I think the more gun-shy they got and said, no, a massacre would probably be a really bad idea. So tell me a little bit about your experience. First, just kind of recap the Baltimore thing, and then kind of blend it into what you went through with the Million Mask March, being there to document it, but then, your presence there, how that relates to the overall story as well.
Right. So to start by answering your question on Baltimore, so as we discussed when I came on New American Media last time, I was arrested in Baltimore on May 2nd, which was the final night that a curfew was imposed. And, there's all kinds of stuff written about this. I think photographyisnotacrime.com probably wrote the best article about this, other than News to Share, right, coming from my mouth myself. So you can investigate this more closely if you're interested in reading it. But the general gist of it was that I had filmed a police chase that occurred directly after the curfew was imposed. And at the end of that chase, when they caught the person who they were after, the National Guard turned around on me and started demanding, show us your credentials, which I did. And after the National Guard, who was pushing me back away from this arrest, very aggressively and with shotguns, I'd add, but they were satisfied and they didn't want to apprehend me. And then a cop came up behind me, and when the National Guard said, "He's credentialed media," the cop said, "I don't care," and threw me on the ground. And the original charge was curfew violation, and when they realized that that was a very, very blatantly anti-policy arrest, they changed it to disorderly conduct, which, I can't, as far as the current legal situation, I can't really share that much more with you because not a whole lot more has happened. But I will say that I am fighting it and pursuing all legal options, and that there may be new news on that.
Would that be news to share? News to share on that? News to share?
Yeah, so if you want to read more about this, you can Google my name as Ford Fischer and News to Share, news, the number 2, share. And so it shouldn't be too hard to find stories about that.
Yeah, it's interesting
situation. But once there's progress on that can be made public, I will be reporting that to the public.
Right. It's interesting with this curfew stuff. How legal is imposing a curfew, and does that apply to the media? And
right.
And then who is the media? We're the New American Media, and what you're doing with News to Share, it's a very similar thing. We haven't really mobilized and organized and launched in any official way for all of our activists, our citizen journalists, as we call them. But really, anybody with an iPhone, anybody with a Galaxy,
right,
and an internet connection, we are the New American Media, because the old American media, and you've interned and worked certain places, on the inside, places that are very well established, and they have very clear-cut criteria with producers explaining, right, this is what we want you to say.
For those who may not know, Brian is referring to the fact that I worked at Fox News for a few months.
Well, there's Fox News. Are you still with PBS?
I continue to do work for them, yes.
A little freelance stuff here.
Although I'm not an employee of PBS, but I edit for them, and I worked for the Hispanic Heritage Awards, which were broadcast on PBS.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, but basically, I worked at a talent agency, the world's largest actually, for, 9 months or something. And I know when you get on the inside of something big, your perspective necessarily changes. Just like under my energy policies, prices will necessarily skyrocket. I think our Sorry, I had to throw that Obama quote in on the day that he dumped the Keystone Pipeline. And hey, I'd love to get your thoughts on that as well. But basically, my point is that if we get on the inside, we kind of get a different perspective of how it really works, of how the sausage is made, as you will say. Right. I mean, you've been there. It's not just keyboard warrior stuff. It's not just activist stuff, not to diminish any of that. But, a well-rounded background and having some perspective, I think, is a very important thing. But, okay, then I'll leave that there and just say good luck with your pending legal situation, and when there's an update to share, feel free to remind me, and especially if it goes well, feel free to hit me up and let me know. We should probably cover this for another topic devoted to it. But anyway, I digress. Let's talk a little bit about what the Million Mask March is all about. How long has this been going on? Right. When did you first become aware of it?
Sure. So the Million Mask March has basically been going on. In D.C., there have been three major ones, and supposedly one occurred in 2012, so this was the fourth annual. But there have been three major ones that actually amounted to hundreds of people and people coming out of state. And more broadly, it is a movement that has basically been going on internationally. So every year on November 5th, they celebrate Guy Fawkes Day. More inspired by the movie V for Vendetta than by the actual revolutionary, radical, Christian of Guy Fawkes. They basically get together and march through the streets of their respective cities. Supposedly a total of 800 of these happened yesterday across the world. The biggest one was London, and that got some international press as, anonymous members were lighting police cars on fire and the like. In the U.S., that tends to be a bit more peaceful, but the Washington, D.C. one tends to be the largest and most well-covered. The politics of it are very interesting because generally you have people united over anger and distrust of the government today. And you actually don't have an enormous amount of political unity, right? You have a lot of far left, you have a lot of far right. You don't have a whole lot of Republicans, you don't have a whole lot of Democrats. What you basically have is people who are really dissatisfied. And the interesting thing is you were talking about does the internet make more people into activists, is that Anonymous is largely an online or digital movement. And so this is the once a year that many, many people will say, okay, we're going to get out there and wear masks. So a lot of people wear the mask for various events, and all kinds of other activism. I've seen people wear Guy Fawkes masks in all kinds of other protests.
So they kind of take their mask off by leaving their keyboard and getting in public to put their mask on to remain to right. keep some sort of anonymity. Right. That's very interesting.
It's a big level. It's a big level of less anonymity, and I think once they get out in person, I would almost say that it's anonymous in name only, because to some degree, what they're doing is still driven by the social media presence of it. A lot of what they're doing is for the photograph, right? There's a lot of selfieing, there's a lot of group photos, and there's a lot of taking off the mask. Not a whole lot of people who actually participate in these Million Mask Marches keep their mask on the entire time. Some of them won't wear a mask at all. Some of them will just wear it part of the time. I saw some people who face painted masks on. So I think in a way it's more about the symbolism. And
wait, some people just put makeup on?
There was one girl I saw who actually drew the sort of eyelashes and like the mustache of Guy Fawkes onto her face. But I mean, she's clearly very identifiable. So there were some people who did not really make any effort to cover their real identity.
Would you say
so? It was a broad range.
Would you say it's similar? Did you attend any, cover any, or attend any Tea Party events or Occupy events?
So I did not attend any of the Occupy events, but I have attended Tea Party rallies, and I think that there's a difference in that first. So actually, when I was at one Tea Party rally in D.C. that there were people wearing Guy Fawkes masks, although not the majority of them by any means. I think that the thing about the Tea Party is that for them the symbol is the Gosden flag, and with Anonymous, the symbol is the mask itself. And there are a lot of people who wave flags at the Million Mask March. In fact, in front of the Monsanto building, they actually took down the American flag and hung up the Monsanto flag on a full American, the full, 20-foot high flagpole.
Wow.
So I think that there's a big emphasis on symbolism when you get into these issues that are more like movements than overall single issue things. So when you have people going out there and protesting something really specific, police violence or Obamacare or the TPP, you see a lot of posters. You see a lot of more rhetoric and specific things. When you have people who are united by a symbol as opposed to by one specific issue, then it's that symbol that they bring out and get united over. So in this case, it was the mask. In my experience with the Tea Party, that's the Gosden flag.
See, it was interesting because with Occupy, I went to Occupy LA just because I'd been hearing, you heard what you heard from the left, and then the right was saying, it's just a bunch of socialists and Marxists and da-da-da and all this stuff. And so I went out there as one of the first things we did, maybe four and a half years ago or so. But we went out there, and I mean, we saw people with signs that said "End the Fed." We had people that some things that were like, "Hey, wait, you're kind of like a Tea Party guy. You're like a Tea Party guy, aren't you?" And I think there's an overlap. Like if you think left and right on a circle, and you keep going around the back side of the circle, I think a lot of these people cross and find each other on the other side of what the air quote mainstream is. I think the disaffected people, it's something that does overlap. I found that interesting myself, that there were more libertarian leaning people at Occupy events with talking to socialists, talking to Marxists, talking to people that are into some very specific other stuff. I found it interesting, and I was glad I went out there because if the only way you consume your news is by what someone else tells you, you might not get the full picture. You might not get the full story. You might not understand that, this Million Mask March, it's not an autonomous, it's not this monolithic, these are our 5 bullet points and this is what we demand now. It's just a bunch of frustrated people that see the system as wrong. Something like that.
Right. And I think within them, there's a lot of political discourse. It's interesting because you actually I say democratic discourse, and there were people who were fighting over whether or not, when they say this is what democracy looks like. That was a very common chant. This is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. And I actually saw a little argument where someone had started that chant, and someone went, "Wait, do we actually like democracy?" And that created a pretty provocative conversation, because then, they start, one was like, well, of course we do. We like democracy because we can rise up and, fight, and our voices need to be heard and all that. And one of them was like, well, not so fast. Democracy is the tyranny of the majority. And so I'm not necessarily endorsing either side of it. But when you do have a much broader movement like Million Mask March, or like the, what you saw with Occupy, you get people of all kinds of different political leanings, and you actually have a lot of really interesting discussion in them. And so sometimes that can look like infighting, and God knows I've seen libertarians infight and claw their throats out over whether the Libertarian Party is actually the statist Libertarian Party and things like that, and there's insults hurled every direction. But I think I saw a lot more solidarity than that at the Million Mask March, and I wonder how many people came out of it thinking something different than when they went into it. One comic I saw that was shared to me by someone at Solutions Institute was about activists. It said the problem with activism, and it was like, how many of you want change? And everybody raises their hand. How many of you want to change? And nobody raises their hand.
That reminds me.
When you see discourse among those people who are participating.
Right. No, that reminds me of What is it? I think it was an Onion article that I read. I love the Onion for their satire. They're so good.
Me too.
I saw one today that said, sorry, completely unrelated, but it said a recent study finds 75% of Chicago's air to be made of bullets. And I just went, oh, God, that is terrible. But I think the Onion thing that I was referencing was more along the lines of recent study shows 97% of Americans want everyone else to take public transportation. And I think
Right,
like that
exactly.
is so true. Like, oh, too many cars on the road. We need public transportation so you guys can get off of my roads and so I can keep driving. I don't want to change. I think there's a lot of truth to that. And another stupid comic joke, and we'll move this right along. Are you familiar with Mitch Hedberg?
Which thing did he draw? He's a comic person, right?
Yeah, well, Mitch Hedberg, he's a comic. He's a comedian. He passed away a few years ago. He was on
Oh, I thought he was a cartoonist. I was close.
C. You had the C word right. The C letter right. But anyway, no, Mitch Hedberg, he's one of my favorite comedians of all time, and he just had this little joke. He said, I'm against protesting, but I don't know. No, I'm sorry. I'm against picketing, but I don't know how to show it. All right. Anyway, it was just a stupid joke, but I think he's one of the funniest out there. But yeah, I don't think that a lot of people do want to change their way. I think a lot of people say, no, I'm living my life right. It's everyone else screwing everything up. They need to stop this. They need to do this. They need to fix. And yeah, a lot of people don't look in the mirror and say, what can I fix about myself? Whether that's going off the grid and living sustainably, growing some of your food. There's a million ways that people can change their personal lives. In a form of activism to change the world in their one little area that they can actually control. We can't really control Washington very well, but we can control our checkbook and our home very well if we want to.
Right.
Do you think a lot of people are just frustrated at the other, but when they point their finger, they're not seeing the three pointed back at themselves?
I think that that's definitely true, and I think that that's why these sort of conversations are important kind of in person, because there's a distinction that I don't think a lot of people see, which is that when a lot of these activist communities are talking, it tends to be outward, right? When you have these close-knit left, right, libertarian, populist, who are socialists, whatever they are, they tend to focus on some kind of an enemy. The government or statism is the enemy of libertarianism. The Occupy people, the corporations are the enemy. And I think that in a lot of cases, the best activism or the most effective activism is that which talks about how to change oneself. I know that Adam Kokesh, who I'm sure you're familiar with, who wrote the book Freedom and has done all kinds of funky activism for libertarianism, he's been trying to go around the country and talk about freedom as a personal journey. He's trying to make the statement that if people can individually live according to freedom or liberty, that you can end up with a more just or libertarian society. And I think that people need to have more of a tendency to apply that to themselves. So personally, and it's unrelated to my journalism, but I happen to be on the libertarian end of the spectrum. And in addition to having a political leaning that tells me that force, fraud, and coercion are bad, I try to actually live life according to that. Would I want to initiate force, fraud, or coercion against somebody else? I'd like to think it's just in my personality not to, but particularly if I'm going to say that that's my political belief, I need to be prepared to live by that.
Right.
And so when I see people out there advocating for all kinds of things, I think that the ones who are most effective are the ones who really show it. And one of the most touching moments, actually, so circling back to the Million Mask March specifically, was that a lot of them are saying, "Oh, the government's screwing us. They can't, they can't help us. We've tried government and welfare for so long. None of it will ever work. We need to be more cooperative." And they actually, the march passed a homeless man, and they all stopped and they actually circled around him, and people just started pitching him money and giving this homeless man money, food, and water. And
I feel like I saw a $20 bill there. Did I see a 20 in there too? This wasn't just coin.
I did capture one. One woman actually did place a $20 bill there. Yes. I think I only saw 120. Most of the rest of the people were giving like stacks of ones, like a handful of ones at a time. He ended up with a pile that, hard to tell, but probably like $150, $200.
He's gonna stay drunk through New Year's.
Hey, so we.
No, but that's something legit. I know, of course, I'm making a joke about that. A lot of the homeless people have serious problems, and some of them are just down on their luck. And who knows? That could be a moment in that guy's life where he spends that $150 on a gym membership so that he can shower and clean up. He's gonna go to Target and get a nice pair of pants and a nice shirt, and he's gonna go on interviews, and he's gonna go to the library and upload all of his stuff online. And he changed his life because of that moment, for all we know. I mean, that is theoretically possible.
So I think that it could be any number of things. Your original assertion that maybe he would just waste it, who knows? I think more realistic. I mean, when I look at somebody who really, like, everything they have in the world is on their back, and this guy, by the way, I mean, he had like a heavy quilt that he was wearing, but he didn't even have a shirt under it. He was wrapped in like a quilt.
Oh, jeez.
And so this is somebody who really, like, has truly nothing. So when he sees a bunch of guys going by with masks who all look like a bunch of Batman villains, I imagine he was scared for a second when they started looking at him. Like, are these guys going to kill me because I'm, whatever? And instead, I think that they live to their values, which is that they freely, voluntarily, tried to help him. And, that more realistically than he buys a gym membership and turns his life around with it. Maybe he doesn't have the ID that he needs to get a job. Maybe it costs like $35 to get an ID. I know it cost me like something like $40 to get a certified birth certificate that I needed to get a job at one point. Maybe that money will help him get like what he needs to actually turn his life around one way or another. There's no way to know, and it's hard to even fathom or fantasize about that kind of struggle. But I can tell you that he looked really appreciative, and particularly for the food. People were giving him snacks and water, and this is somebody who probably struggles to stay alive day to day, not knowing where the next random person with a granola bar is going to come from.
Could you imagine? Let's imagine, because he wasn't a young man. Would you say about 50, 60? If you had to guess?
Hard to tell because he had a pretty
Fair.
long beard and it was kind of hard to see his face. I'd guess 50 but no idea.
I mean, just for the sake of, let's imagine, because we all know 50-year-olds that haven't really spent a lot of time online, and they might have had a home computer, or maybe their cell phone has some stuff, but it's always tough texting with mom, or when grandma gets let's just imagine for a second that this guy's kind of unfamiliar. Maybe he's been homeless for a while, is what I'm getting at, and he doesn't have the newest toys and whatever. And he's not familiar with the V for Vendetta movie. And yeah, could you imagine if someone who really isn't that tech savvy or pop culture savvy all of a sudden has, how many people would you say surrounded him?
There were broadly 100 people on the street right near him, but there were probably like 20 or 30 people rushed around his little like park bench, all trying to get close to him, and a lot of people filming too. Right? He's probably got like 10 or so hands with cameras pointed at him as well, all out of nowhere.
I wonder if he was actually okay. So I would imagine first it would be curiosity. What's all that hullabaloo over there? And then that would turn to, oh my God, they're coming right at me. Holy crap, they look like Batman villains. What's going to happen? Oh crap. And then the heart starts racing. And then cameras go in his face. And then food and money starts showing up. And then he goes, oh man, maybe I won one of those $1 million shows and I'm going to get rich. And then, he makes $100 and gets a granola bar and they walk away. He goes, oh crap, that was way worse. Maybe he got actually let down by that at the end. Anyway, I just wanted to jump into his mind for a second. But, that is something, if everybody does something small. I just became familiar with this site, what's it called, Patreon, where it's like the patrons of the arts used to fund the opera houses and what have you in the 17th century, 18th century. Right. And now it's a way for activists to be like, hey, I want to do this. Maybe you guys could give me $1 a month, sign up for this, and just kind of help support me in my journey. Give me $30 a month, like donate something. And, it just kind of comes together and this thing launches. It's very interesting how media is changing activism, how media is changing with the internet and accessibility. It's just interesting to see, because this guy all of a sudden had all these cameras in his face. Why were they in his face? Because everybody's going to upload this thing, and it's instant news. It's instant. I just told a story that I encountered. I just saw this thing happen. It had to be a crazy day for that guy.
Yeah. No, I'm sure
he's going to tell that story for a while.
And I wonder whether he's going to see all those things. He was having a funny conversation with them where they were like, "You're going to be famous." He's like, "How do you know I'm not already famous?"
He could be infamous.
Well, we're going to make you viral for this reason. So they had an interesting conversation with him. He seemed mentally fairly healthy and normal. I wonder whether he got a chance to see online what he's now come to symbolize, because this is now one of the more popular and kind of well-known moments of the march.
Oh, it was staged. That was staged. That's a plant, right? I'm sure the trolls will say that as well. Oh, that's just a publicity stunt.
I could check online and see whether people have. I haven't looked yet to see what people have said about it.
Ooh, if they didn't, if they didn't, could I be the first one to say that? Because
that it was staged?
Oh, it was staged. It was a publicity stunt. It was so disingenuous. Yeah, I mean, trolls are everywhere. You gotta love it. But yeah, you mentioned Adam Kokesh, and yeah, we know him from the United We Stand Festival. We interviewed him there, and then we actually caught him. I think it was on his last leg of that Freedom Tour, where he was doing all the campfires and just touring the country and doing stuff. And I mean, there are a lot of new independent media outlets and personalities, from the Kokesh and the Mark Dice to, I mean, everybody's doing their own thing, and it's kind of neat because, not everybody fits into a neat little package, and there's only so many 5 o'clock or 8 o'clock shows on network television or cable TV, and I think the variety of ideas and the different viewpoints and perspectives and theories, I just find it great that we don't have to be limited to, when I grew up, I didn't have cable. It was 3, 5, and 8. I got NBC, I got ABC, I got CBS. That was it. Not a whole lot of intellectual diversity there. Exactly, but a lot like you're saying with the people there. Not everybody's united by one particular philosophy. Things definitely are changing with that. So let's talk about the 5th of November. Let's talk about the Million Mask March. Once you get past creating one of the more interesting days that homeless man is ever going to have in his lifetime, what happens after that? Sure, and I should note, I just took a look at the comments online. I saw one person write, "LOL, he's a professional homeless person. What a bunch of idiots." Maybe he could. Hey, you know what? I've seen those stories out here in L.A. There was one, I don't remember, a year ago or 2 years ago, I forget. But it was a professional homeless person. It was a mother, and she would drag her kids, and they'd be missing shoes or whatever, and they'd be standing there at a shopping mall exit or whatever, some parking lot, getting money, and then she finally got busted. They caught her going around the side and then getting into her Range Rover and switching her clothes on, and she was always out there every day, and she was doing this as like an exploitation of her and her children. To play upon the sympathies of others. So, I mean, those things do happen. They do happen, but I'm sure this guy wasn't doing. He was I think he was sleeping until they got there. He didn't have a sign. I mean, honestly, he wasn't panhandling or anything. It just came up on him. He was like, "Oh, okay, what's going on here?" What's that video of that kid when he comes out of the dentist? Is this real life? Just asking. Is this the real life or just fantasy? Am I still dreaming? Expecting to wake up on the bench there. I had an experience when I got my tonsils out. I was early elementary school, little kid, and I just remember when I had to go under, go to the pediatric doctor or whatever. It was around Halloween as well, and everybody in the office was dressed up like creepy clowns and all these just horrible costumes. And I just remember, with the laughing gas, kind of zoning out, and all these creepy monsters are above me, and I was just like, okay. It was one of the worst experiences of my life. But yeah, I could imagine waking up from a nap on a park bench to just see cartoon characters around. Sorry, I'm just fascinated by that one moment now. Now I'm just like
Sure,
putting
and it was
myself.
a very fascinating moment. It was a very viral moment.
Yeah, and I did happen to catch it, thankfully, so I do know what you're talking about. But then after that, what else is going on? Because
Right.
you saw some of the petty vandalism, the spray paint, and you saw broken windows and things like this, which for me,
Right.
I that's the thing I cannot stand about protesters, and I'll use that in air quotes because I just think there's no quicker way to shut down a movement. To delegitimize an issue than to sink to the lowest common denominator. Of course, also knowing that there are paid agent provocateurs that do this on their own to discredit the movement. I get that. But I saw some of these pictures as well. So tell me about after the homeless man.
So I can tell you about a few things on that. The first one is that having been with the central leadership of Anonymous the night before, and I should also note that the Black Panthers were present, claiming that they would be there essentially to provide tactical support, that their intention this year was to really, really be peaceful. In previous years it was, we're going to be peaceful, but if you want to totally go crazy to make this newsworthy and get into some fights with cops and shit, be my guest. There was a little bit of that rhetoric kind of in previous years.
Yeah.
This year there was really, really an effort on the tactics surrounded around let this be sort of a virgin protest where there's not one single arrest, right? And they were talking about what that meant technically, and in some of it was here's how to run away. If you're about to get arrested, here's how to get away. There was talking about in some cases, right, if someone's treading a police line and a cop goes to grab someone, having everybody be prepared to pull that person back. And in some cases, you had people responding to that technique where they were very prepared to do that. But generally, the attitude was we need to be as peaceful as possible so that this doesn't get any negative media attention. Because the fact is that when those things do happen, when the violence happens, if anybody gets arrested, that has to be in the reporting. I covered it last year. People marching the entire day long. When one person got tased and ultimately arrested, that had to be in my reporting. It can't not be. And
well, if it bleeds, it leads. You all right?
Yeah. Go on. I was going to say there can be the accusation of, oh, that's sensational journalism, that you have to have that stuff, but you do. Honestly, those things are important in the story. They can't be the whole story. You can't just show that. You have to have the balance of also showing everything else. But that was why they emphasized, let's make there be no arrests. Let's have this be completely peaceful so that there's not a single negative thing that the media can say about the way they performed. And they stuck pretty close to that.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's the if it bleeds, it leads component.
Right.
We've known that, the sensational journalism, the yellow journalism, the pamphleteers of the early Revolutionary War and such. Okay, if it bleeds, it leads. But, you want to talk about editing things out. If things get violent, that's something that must be reported. And I think it's something that definitely, that whole Bundy Ranch thing, that was just, I've never walked into a powder keg that hot before.
Yeah.
I don't even know why the hell I did it. I think back on it, it's like, what the hell was I but yeah, you got to tell the story. You have to be honest about what's going on. I'm scrolling through your stuff here on Twitter and showing some of these things. You got Justin King and Dan Johnson of Pandas, of Solutions Institute, both of them as well. And then what was this thing?
He was there representing Panda as well. He had a Panda T-shirt on as well there.
And that would be the People Against the NDAA, PANDA. That National Defense Authorization Act. That's another one. But I'm scrolling through the rest of these, and what is this thing about Anonymous, about only going after college-age students? What the heck was this thing?
I'm sorry, can you explain, what do you mean by that? Where did you read that?
Yeah, no, I'm just scrolling through your Twitter timeline, and it's showing pictures. The one picture, a couple of these with Justin and with Dan, it kind of, and you just mentioned the Black Panthers. It reminded me of that scene in Forrest Gump where they go to D.C. and,
right.
I'm sorry I had a fight in the middle of your Black Panther party. That's like I'm looking at this. It looks like a scene right out of there. But I scrolled a couple more, and it's just last posted on the suspected shooters thread in the UCC shooting about only shooting college. I guess that's.
Oh, that was quite a while. Yeah, that was not related to the.
Yeah, I glanced at it and it says anonymous, but this was an anonymous post from a. Okay, so.
Right.
I scrolled one post past where this is showing everybody here around the water. It looks like a big turnout, but okay, my bad. Moving on. So the strategy and the emphasis was, guys, don't be assholes. Don't do anything stupid.
Right.
This is just, Okay, so that was the planning.
When that broken window happened, it's funny because so there was other graffitiing and vandalism and a whole lot of blocked traffic and loud words, but that broken glass was probably the only thing like it that happened there. People weren't really throwing things. People weren't really fighting. People weren't really breaking windows. And that guy was just knocking on the EPA. What they were doing was they were trying to get into the EPA building by pushing on revolving doors and being blocked from doing so physically until the EPA people were able to actually lock the revolving door somehow. And so then they start hitting on the doors, but they're imitating knocking, as in open up. And the guy starts knocking really, really hard, and then he just smashes the window. And well, I think he was certainly okay with doing that. I actually think it was kind of an accident. I'm not convinced that guy's intention was, I'm going to break a window right now with my hands. Because if I were to go break a window, I would use a club or something.
A crowbar, a baseball
punch in a
bat.
glass window with my fist. And by the way, kudos to anybody who can just break a window with their hand and then not he didn't have to shake it off or anything. His hand is made of brick or something.
All right, I'll grant you that. Yeah, it's very different when they grab a part of a barricade and break a window, or when you see these types of air quote protests, and yeah, okay, so a very different scenario. But I guess then not seeing a lot of intentional stupidity. I'll just call it straight out. Not seeing a lot of that type of thing. There was obviously the homeless moment, but I guess in general, what is the takeaway then? Having gone through all of these, I don't know if you have another couple key moments you wanted to share, other than giving the total overview. That's all up to you.
I think that their biggest thing was they were trying to make people aware of their existence and their sort of minority viewpoint and political identity. So a big rhetoric of theirs was, we're blocking all this traffic, right? If you had to really boil down to numbers or money or something like that, what the most damaging thing they did was, it was that they blocked a lot of traffic, including up into rush hour. They were blocking Constitution Ave. They had an 8-lane highway at a standstill, for many, many minutes at a time in different intersections and areas and stuff. And when people started honking or when people tried to drive through them, it would just provoke them to hold on harder. And what they would usually yell at these people is, they're like, we're fighting for you. Don't you see that? We're fighting for you. And usually the people who they would be less aggressive with or actually let through are the people who would honk in support or put out a thumbs up or something like that, oftentimes just to sort of appease them. So a big thing was that they just wanted to be seen. And one of their biggest frustrations was that there wasn't a whole lot of media there. And so it was basically myself and Fifth Column News were the only two that really stuck around the whole time. And I can tell you, Tim Pool from Vice was there. I spoke to him for a while. There was a producer from ABC who was sent. And as she was talking to me, she was like, I'm here, but it's sort of because it was going to be a slow news day, and basically they wanted this as backup. Basically, if nothing else happened, or if this somehow inflames, but that ABC producer said, I don't even know if they're going to air what I come up with today. And then RT sent somebody for a live hit because they were reporting on it internationally. But so overall, us and Fifth Column News, and then these sort of quasi-activist journalists, right? The type, the live streamers, The guys who say they're journalists but wear the anonymous mask while they're journalisming.
Right.
Those were sort of the majority of it.
Did I catch a picture? I thought I don't know if that was on you. I'm trying to remember instant recall now. A picture with Luke Radowski. Was he there with you?
Luke Radowski was there. Another sort of major name in this sphere is Alex Poucher, who has contributed footage to News to Share, but who also wears the anonymous mask, and also does freelance journalism work for all kinds of places. He was also present. So you had a large presence of that kind of people.
Yeah,
a lot of cell phones, a lot of iPhone journalists.
Right, a lot of people on Periscope, or a lot of people live streaming however they can, or taking the content after the fact. But no, I mean, I guess 4.5 years into doing this, I guess there start to be a lot of the same key players. You're mentioning Kokesh, and then I see Radowski, and then of course it's Dan and Justin King, and it's like this little network of really just citizen journalists. Key players that tend to kind of go. I know Alex Freeman is doing that mobile response unit so that he can just go where the story is, go to Ferguson, go to Baltimore, just kind of live this different life where it's like, all right, nobody's going to pay to send me on these to go cover these events like ABC Girl that might not even have it put on the news. So we kind of have to be mobile enough to just go out to Bundy Ranch ourselves. We might just have to, when something interesting is happening, that we have to be able to go there. And I find that is a very interesting trend that more and more people are willing to kind of set their lives up so that they can do it this way. Of course, you live out there. You're right in the belly of the beast.
Absolutely right. I'm the one guy sort of from Washington D.C. A lot of everybody else is coming from out of state and all that kind of stuff. Dan Johnson came from Georgia. Justin King came from Florida is where he's currently living. And Alex Poucher, the one I mentioned, came from Germany.
Oh, wow.
People really travel to be there. And what's actually kind of interesting is you mentioned Alex Freeman. This was actually within the community of people who were even aware of it. This was a controversial march. Freeman was advocating that people don't attend the D.C. one. He was saying that these issues are much more vocal at a state level and that people should be protesting at their state houses. But he felt that the D.C. one was too mainstream. I could put it that way, or for that matter, and this would probably represent his opinion better, that it would be less productive.
No, and that's interesting because the people want to march on and say this is what democracy looks like. And then a conversation starts. I think it's, we say here at the New American Media, seeking truth, challenging dogma, and having fun. Join our mostly civil conversation. And I think there needs to be enough room where you can agree to disagree on particular points, as long as you're coming from a place where you want to respect the other person, you want maximum liberty and freedom, and the only time things take a turn is when somebody wants to try to kill you, which I think is a deal breaker. I personally can't stand the blocking of traffic. I think it's very selfish, and I don't like it at all. I think it just really hurts movements. But yeah, I mean, someone like Alex might say go to your local level, and so other people, no, we got to go right to the gates of Washington. And that's fine. Everybody's allowed to have a differing opinion on that, and I think where a lot of rifts can occur, it's over these small details. I can be friends with people, I can't stand their politics, but I don't need to choose all my time arguing with them about it either. It's
of
like
course not.
The digital version versus your online version. I try to keep 90-something% of my politics on my agree to disagree Facebook feed, and then on my personal, almost never. And then in sports, for some reason, I love to blend the political sports stories in there to get people thinking about politics in the sports group. I love it. But I'm very cognizant of trying to understand the parameters where open and civil conversation is encouraged versus the keyboard warriors that just want to start swearing and go on a personal vendetta against you. I don't have time for that. I don't want to participate in things that way. But yeah, definitely. Everybody would probably. There's a lot of differing opinions there. So then, as the Million Mask March kind of winds down, wraps up, here we are, the 6th. The next day. Was anything accomplished? I know, talking about these planning meetings and trying to actually do something in a more organized way instead of just totally disharmonious. Was anything accomplished? Is there any plan for a next step, or was it deemed as a
Right.
success, maybe?
Well, I think that at this point, they use it in a way like a holiday to represent their ideology in the same way that perhaps we use the 4th of July. And I'll admit I'm a pretty patriotic person, and I know that, among members of Anonymous, right, there were some people who had American flags and things like that. There are some people who would probably say, oh, you're a nationalist if you celebrate the 4th of July. I happen to love the 4th of July. I happen to be very patriotic.
Same here.
Anyways, 4th of July is a holiday that people celebrate. You wouldn't call it political, but people celebrate just the ideology of America or being American and whatever that maybe means to you. I think that the 5th of November, the Guy Fawkes Day, in a way, they use it more like a holiday than a opportunity to create real change. And of course, in name, they're saying we're creating change. We're out there advocating for what it is we believe in. But they didn't really have a hugely unified message. Their message really was, we're here and we're present, and you should listen to us, and you should question what you currently believe. And so I think that it's more of a celebration, and maybe a bit of an anarchical celebration, right? That they celebrate by interrupting traffic, that they celebrate by marching and by screaming at various buildings. They're yelling at the White House, Obama, come out, we got some shit to talk about. Like Obama's actually going to, put on his slippers and, walk out to the front porch and chat with, these Batman villains.
No, that reminds me of a Simpsons thing. It was a headline, Old Man Screams at Rock, or Old Man Yells at Rock. And just running around yelling at inanimate objects, you building, you!
Right, and I've seen edits of that. My favorite one is Old Man Yells at Capitalism, and it's Bernie Sanders.
Oh, that's not... How did you like Larry David doing Bernie Sanders, by the way?
Oh, that was hysterical, spot on.
I hope he does it on a continuing basis. That is so good. David Alan Grier is pretty good as Carson. Fallon is really good as Trump. No, I like this stuff, man. I love the theater of it all, the political theater.
Actually, what you might find pretty funny was these guys outside the EPA. They were screaming the chant. So when they're marching, they scream, "Whose streets are streets? Whose streets are streets?" They get to the EPA and they're outside. The chant was actually, "Whose building? Our building. Whose building? Our building." They couldn't even get it. They were locked out. It wasn't their building. Objectively, it was not their building because they were not inside. They were knocking on the door.
What is it? Possession is 9/10 of the law. This whole thing is very interesting, and I'm all for it. I'm all for it as long as it stays, mostly civil, as long as it stays peaceful. I can't stand, when things devolve. But I guess this is something that kind of started, and it's probably not going to be going anywhere for a while, huh? Because this is a global thing.
Right. This is a global movement, and it will continue. And I think the thing that it probably accomplishes is that, in a way, it's PR for Anonymous, because there aren't many other days of the year that people see them on the streets. And there's this rhetoric that when people say, oh, Anonymous is doing this or that either they're this really, really ominous kind of quasi-terrorist dark web organization, or they're like teenagers who live with their parents, or they're like neckbeards without jobs. And those all exist in that movement. But I think that they use this as an opportunity for people to see them and see them for who they really are. I can tell you that the racial diversity was much larger than a lot of people would assume. I think that the makeup of various types of people and political beliefs, again, the fact that the Black Panthers were present, the fact that one of the loudest leaders, one of the most filmed leaders, was a young Black woman wearing an Anonymous mask, and I think that actually makes a big difference to how people see them. So now when they do these things online, and we could talk endlessly about this KKK release that Anonymous has made, but things like that are probably fueled by the media seeing this is what these guys look like on the ground. And of course, it's not all the hackers who then come out on the Million Mask March, and not everybody who's going out on the Million Mask March actually is a part of the hacker. But I can tell you, having reported on both of those things very intimately, that there is a really big overlap. Most of the people who were involved in the Op KKK that I reported on a year ago, I'm still involved in their chat threads. I still talk with them and read their stuff. They all have their own local Million Mask Marches. There were people who went out to Million Mask Marches that had 10 people in attendance. So when you have that unity between the internet and, quote unquote, real life, I think that in a way that's what they're trying to advocate, is just people knowing who they are and kind of breaking the stereotypes.
Yeah, my thing with Anonymous is I don't really know what to make of it after, if something happens, let's say it's Ferguson or Baltimore. I remember, really checking the threads, a hashtag Anonymous or, whatever was going on at the time. And since there is no... It's easy to tell when the President of the United States is making an official statement through his press secretary, and you know that it's officially sanctioned as, yeah, we approve this message. I saw varying degrees of things that I would never support, things that I completely opposed and I thought were absolutely reckless and irresponsible, next to other anonymous posts that were saying legitimate things. I saw a very, not to say that they weren't legitimately acting like asses, because they were, but the other group, but I mean, without having a central figure, it's hard to tell if it's just one person that's advocating some messed up stuff versus this is... I guess there really is no spokesperson, which makes it an interesting movement to follow. Would you agree with that?
Right, and that's part of their movement, is their decentralization. I can tell you that, and with regards to the public, there are very few figures that the public can latch onto. Right, with this KKK leak, there's almost no accountability because the public can't go ask who, whatever the person is. There's no Twitter account, there are Twitter accounts, but there's not a specific human being with a face that people know how to attribute this to, and that's a good thing for their message, which is that it's this intense democratization and decentralization. But it also does mean that there's not visible leadership. I can tell you, though, there are very, very clear leaders once you are actually on the inside of talking to these people. When I was reporting on them, they have very clear sort of leaders within their individual sects. It's just that, once you get out to the public, once they actually publish their stuff, nobody knows who it is, right? When I had a video sent to News to Share from Op KKK in 2014 that was threatening really the lives of the KKK if they were to make good on their threat to attack, anonymous members in person. I do know the real name of people involved in that, and I'll take those names to my grave as a journalist. But to the public, it's anonymous, and it's this mask, and it's a man with a suit with a question mark for a face, and for the foreseeable future, that's basically how it'll stay.
With that Op KKK, as we start to wrap this up here, I saw it, but I do this thing now. I've kind of forced myself. I've been exercising this muscle so much, Ford, that I think I might be overdoing it just a little bit, but here's the gist of the exercise. When something very intriguing, very specific, very accusatory happens, I tend to back up, and I try, as much as I can whenever I can, I try to force myself to take a pause and really think it through. I think with Trayvon, I did it the entire court case. And I'm like, I ain't saying nothing till the end of this. And then by the end, I had an opinion. Same with Mike Brown. Tamir Rice, I'm still waiting a little bit on that. And Kelly Thomas, that's already done. And I completely made up my mind.
Kelly Thomas was pretty clear cut.
That was the
worst. My opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that was, there have been very few times that I called my buddy John B. Wells to jump on Coast to Coast when he was the host over there. And for that one, I said, John, you put me on for the first hour. I cannot believe they let the Fullerton, California cops off with killing Kelly Thomas. By the way, listeners, it's all online. Look on YouTube if you want to ruin your life. if you want to ruin your
Yeah,
day.
that video is unbelievable. And actually, I mean, I know that that's one that you're particularly passionate about. I remember you bringing it up actually on the last time that I was on your show.
Yeah, it was in my backyard. I saw it, and when these police officers, it annoys me too because I look at it. I don't care that he's a white guy and that he was killed by a Latino cop and this kind of cop and that guy's ethnic. I just saw a human being getting bludgeoned to death as the pool of blood just expanded over 15, 20 minutes, however long it took. Just beaten to death, and you have audio. He puts on a latex glove, the cop does, and says, "See these fists? They're getting ready to F you up." I've never seen a more crystal cut, clear cut, just hands down, this is a slam dunk case, and these officers got off. And that's the thing. The one good thing I hope we're taking away from Mike Brown is, I want body cameras to protect the police when they don't deserve accusations and protect the citizens when they don't deserve abuse. I think that's the only good thing that came from that, and I sure hope that's implemented nationwide. But, I mean, it's... Where the heck was I going with this? Now we went off...
I can tell you. So you were saying how... most cases aren't clear cut, so you're talking about Op KKK.
Yes, I was
lack of clarity about that.
Thank you, man. You're good. Swinging that back around. Is Op KKK? Have you vetted it? Because I saw the story and I distanced myself from it to say, okay, I'm not going to recklessly share a bunch of people's names with accusations. I'm not touching this at all. I want to investigate this just because, Spike Lee tweets out, here's the address of George Zimmerman, basically go get him. And, this elderly couple's getting abused. Like, who is Spike Lee to go send a lynch mob after somebody that used a handgun in self-defense? That's my stance after the case. But, I wanted to distance myself from it. You've studied it. What is this thing about, and how much is valid?
Right. Okay. So I want to make a bit of a distinction, which is that there are sort of two waves of anonymous versus KKK conflicts. In the November 2014 wave of the violence in Ferguson, and so for people who need to get caught up on their history, there was violence at the very beginning in August. There was a second wave when the verdict was read, and then there was a more recent one on the anniversary. So there have sort of been three waves. In the second one, the KKK was very actively recruiting on the basis of this case, and Anonymous went to fight them, and they said, we're going to take your Twitter accounts and your website, and the KKK said, no, you won't. And like the next thing that happened was the profile picture of the Klan's Twitter changed to a Klansman on a noose, and the next tweet was, "We are Anonymous. We've taken your Twitter account."
Wow.
And so those guys. So I was in the message threads with the ones involved with that hack in 2014, and there was then a message basically sent by those Klansmen saying, we're really on the ground types. We don't really care about our online assets, but we're going to kill people wearing masks. And that escalated to be a very, very ugly conversation, which included, there was one video that to this day, it's actually the most viewed News to Share video of all time, which was Anonymous sent News to Share a video and said, put this out, where they basically said, the cops are on the side of the KKK. Anonymous will be present during the protests, and we will protect you from both of them. And very ominously, there was this line where there was the Guy Fawkes mask, and it said, "We are the law now." And that ended up getting 600,000 views. Huffington Post reported on it.
Wow.
A number of very mainstream organizations, RT, put it on their broadcast. And it escalated, and eventually News to Share also filmed, and I should say specifically Trey Inks filmed, and I edited a interview that happened, or I shouldn't even say an interview, a sit-down conversation that happens between an Anonymous leader and Frank Ancona, who was the Grand Wizard of the Klan, where basically they sat down and at an In-N-Out burger, I think, and they pretty much agreed, all right, and the Anonymous guy didn't order anything. Frank Ancona had a Diet Coke, and
they should have got an Animal Style. Come on, get a double, get your Animal Style on. Where was this? Was it in California?
I would have had an eating contest. I would have been like, give me like the 10-decker hamburger, and I'm just going to eat this, giant cow on a piece of bread.
Hey, and the fresh cut,
I'm stronger
the
than
fresh
you.
cut French fries. Let's not forget they're freshly cut. They have the machine. They go chunk, and that's what they throw in. Where was this? Was this in California or?
This was in Missouri, St. Louis.
Hold on. In-N-Out is all over there too.
I believe it was I could be wrong about the exact Steak and Shake. I could find you the exact name of it. It was higher end than a Wendy's or McDonald's, and I'm pretty sure it was a. It was along the lines of In-N-Out or Five Guys or like one of those slightly higher.
One of those joints. One of those joints. No, it's interesting now that you brought up Wendy's and McDonald's and whatever. That was a little note that I made here, by the way, as we get back to your story in a second. But talking about the stuff that we can do as activists and good citizens of the world. Corporations are only as powerful. Like I said in my intro, my grandparents taught me to be very responsible with money, to save, to work hard, which is why I like capitalism. You work hard, you save hard, you keep hard, you play hard, you set yourself up right.
Amen.
But corporations are only as powerful as we willingly hand them our dollar bill certificates from the Federal Reserve. They're only as powerful as we allow them. And I've seen these stories over the past few months. Monsanto profits are way down. McDonald's is contracting and shrinking and in free fall danger mode. Their big idea is, you can have hash browns all day. Yeah, that'll fix it. Come back in. And people are like, no, we don't want your crap food. We just don't want it. People are waking up and they're voting with their dollars. So, wherever this meeting happened in Missouri or Mississippi, wherever you said, it is important to remember that we vote with our dollars, and that's one of the most effective forms of activism that we could possibly have.
Right, yeah, and that's the concept of democratic capitalism, but that's a story for another day.
Yeah, it's an interesting election with Bernie Sanders in it. You still have some John McAfee and some I don't know if Gary Johnson's officially in this one.
He will be.
Probably. We had him on the show last time when he was running. We'll bring him back if he is. But no, I mean, do you think our country's moving more toward? I don't even want to say Republican or Democrat. Let me rephrase this and just open it up. Do you see a general movement in our country, or is it still going to be a 47% kind of nail biter down to hanging chads in Florida kind of thing with this country? Do you see it starting to swing a different way with the pendulum, more freedom, more socialist, more?
I think that you see a large. I was recently on another show called Living Room Conversations. We were talking about political politicization with the media, and the point that I made with them is that I think we have this enormous polarization with regards to party politics, where people are getting, as the political landscape is getting a little bit more confusing for people are really latching on to their labels, right? I happen to be registered Republican, but I'm really not committed to voting for a Republican if it's a Jeb Bush.
Hear, hear. I just say no more Clinton, no more Bush. Let's leave it at that. I don't like oligarchs.
That's the sentiment of people like us, though. I think what I see more is that people are getting more radically attached to their specific party, and I don't see a whole lot of really new ideas, a whole lot of polarization with regards to actual ideas. I think that maybe Bernie sort of represents something new. I think that Rand Paul is a real deviation that I really respect with regards to the current Republican Party. But by and large, I think I see more people who are committed to that, 47%, and then, the independents will kind of swing it in one way or another. And those independents aren't the kind of independents that, I sort of am. They're the kind of independents that are centrist by and large. And so what I see the whole political system becoming is you have these extreme party affiliations, but then the parties themselves aren't so different. I don't see a huge difference between Trump and Sanders. I don't see a huge difference between Bush and Clinton. I often challenge people who are like, "Oh, ready for Hillary." I'm like, can you name a really specific policy of hers that is different from Jeb Bush? And mostly the answer is no.
I like to ask, can you name a single accomplishment?
of Hillary Clinton's.
Yep.
She destroyed Libya. That's pretty good.
That is pretty good. Leaving our servicemen to just hang out on the line there and then lying about a YouTube video. But no, there's no story there. There's not, the Clinton Global Scam Fund, the pay-to-play political monster that's become. No, nothing to see there. I'm storing all my personal data in a closet in, where was that, Utah? I mean, like, there's so much shady stuff going on with her, and it's just, I still see half the country just going, yeah, Hillary. The left is just going to vote that way. I like that the right has rejected Bush, but I don't really know which direction it's going after that.
I don't see a whole lot. They're rejecting Bush because they're like, oh, he's not a real conservative. But then come on, are the other front runners really all that revolutionary? I don't think there isn't much that Trump is a man of big. He's a man of, we're going to make it bigger. We're going to build a wall. We're going to drop a a planet on top of ISIS. Or everything with him has to be really enormous, and I don't think that's really a conservative ideology. So again, Trump is saying he wants to make everything big. That's kind of what Bernie is doing. He's just saying it in a slightly more fluffy way.
Well, I think Trump is saying he's going to make the Mexican government pay for it, though. He's going to. That's a little bit the difference. When he runs,
totally a thing, because that totally makes sense.
It's when he runs out of his bar tab. Who he's designating? No, he's got it right there. Hang on, I'll be right back, and then you don't come back into the restaurant. You just pin the receipt on somebody else. No, I mean it is interesting to see. I guess your synopsis that's a little disheartening. Takes a little wind out of my sails, because I like to hope that more people are disconnecting from parties as opposed to running toward them. In fact, I had a chance to speak with and interview Michael Steele, former chairman of the RNC, a couple weeks ago, out at Politicon out here. And I just straight up told him, I said, as misguided as it was, you guys had me in my youth. I voted for you in my youth. I said, but when I saw you literally trade Ron Paul's speech that he deserved down in Tampa, literally traded it for an empty chair, you kind of lost me for good. I see you just as corrupt as the other side. And we had a good chat. It's online if people want to take a look at it. But, I mean, literally, he won the plurality of 5 states. Ron Paul was entitled to his speech. He wouldn't let him proofread it. They pulled a power maneuver, and they brought Clint Eastwood in and put an empty chair there, just a big middle finger to it. And I just said, you know what, this party doesn't care about the people inside of the party. They care about what they care about, and they're going to get their Jeb Bush if they want their Jeb Bush. Whatever they want, they're going to find a way to do it. They're going to find a way to do it, and the party lost me. So, on a personal level, it's disheartening to hear you see, to hear your summarization as more people are getting hyper Republican or hyper Democrat, because I went the exact opposite. I just disconnected from them.
And I think that's sort of what's happening with me. Again, so again, this is totally separate from my journalism, but in my own politics, while I continue to sort of have faith in the kind of constitutional, conservative, libertarian values that the Republican Party maybe could cling on to just a little bit, largely I'm very, very willing to vote third party. And I think I actually see more people ready to do that if it's not the fringier candidates that succeed. I saw one article by Reason Magazine, who I also used to work for, and they're, of course, a big libertarian outlet. They said Hillary versus Jeb would be the best thing for the libertarian movement. And
I did catch that one. Good, yeah.
They said, look, if we have Jeb Bush versus Hillary Clinton, and you've got this basically ugly neoconservative centrism between the two of them, it's just their debates, they wouldn't have a whole lot to flesh out. And essentially this article is proposing that while of course it wouldn't create the most libertarian end for the country for the next 4 years, it would probably really strengthen the libertarian movement for people to look at these two and say, huh? Is this the debate? Is this what democracy is? It's these two? Aren't they the same?
Coke and Pepsi. Very different.
Right, yeah. and I think that can make people really question their democratic process. I know there's the old homage, democracy is two wolves and a sheep deciding what's for dinner.
Exactly.
The two-party system is two wolves telling you what's for dinner, or asking which wolf is going to eat you.
Yeah, I say they're two wings of the same dirty bird.
Yeah, if we're going to go with like animal analogies.
Yeah, the hedgehog in politics. No, I got nothing on a hedgehog.
There's the porcupine is the libertarian. I've seen all kinds of things done with the "Don't Tread on Me" snake.
The snake,
I saw one person posted on my wall actually a picture of a boot on the "Don't Tread on Me" snake, and it said, "I specifically requested the opposite of this."
And I'm so excited for it. I'm glad you kind of mentioned that. I am so excited that this is my first election in the fully, how would I say it? Okay, Ford, help me find the word I'm looking for. You know how like driverless cars is a thing, but it's a thing that happens on Google campus. It's something that's being experimented, maybe little test trials, but it's not out there. Whereas today, everybody has their iPhone or their Galaxy and they're glued to it. Once it's fully implemented or once it's fully rolled out, I don't know what phrase I'm looking for, but
are you saying that this is your first election as an enlightened person?
Yeah, interesting. And great, now I got a media guy asking me questions. Nah, I love it.
Yeah. Now I'll be interviewing you for the duration of your radio show.
Switch. No, I was aware. Last election was the first time I did not vote Republican. I finally bailed. But this is maybe the first cycle where I've been totally on board with understanding you can't change the party from within, that it's just a monster that devours stuff. But no, I guess I was kind of more saying that I'm on a much less sophisticated and interesting way. I'm so thrilled that this is my first election season once the meme generation has been unleashed and fully implemented across America.
Yeah.
That one with the foot on the... I specifically requested the opposite of this. It's like it's kind of turned everybody into like an online comic.
Absolutely. The favorite one is Barney Sandler's.
What is that?
It is a page, so it's Bernie Sanders, except it's Barney Sandler's. They added an L to the last name. And it's a page of memes where they take Bernie Sanders' actual lines, and they turn everything that he says into him advocating for memes. So it'll be a picture of him in sort of an inspiring stance, and he'll say, "The Koch brothers don't want our poor brothers and sisters to be given 15 memes an hour. I disagree."
Wow.
And he's like, "I will fight to make sure that there are dank memes in every household." Basically, things like that.
Can you do me a favor? Can you share that with me on our Twitter feed or on our Facebook or something?
Absolutely.
Connect me with that.
Funniest political pages I've ever seen.
We had a really good conversation with Michael P. Ramirez. He's a 2-time Pulitzer Prize winning editorial cartoonist. We talked with him a couple months back, and it's just interesting because you get 2 Pulitzer Prizes, and you probably could have got a few more, but you've got to be so in tune with politics to take a complex issue and sum it up in a meme, some goofy meme. I mean, I think it takes, like they used to say the court jester was the only person that was allowed to tell the king the truth. Because he would phrase it as a joke, and he wouldn't get beheaded for it. Ha, ha, ha. You still had to be careful, but you got away with a lot more because you were using humor. So I think it shows an immense amount of talent and creativity and wisdom, frankly, brain power, when you can combine politics in a funny way that just breaks down all of the bullshit and just gets to one simple meme, and you go, oh, okay,
yeah,
I get it.
Gets people engaged. I just tweeted at the New American Media with a link to that. One that I read right now is, so Bernie at the real debate, he said, "I'm sick and tired of hearing about your damn emails to Hillary Clinton." On this it says, I'm tired of hearing about those damn emails. The only email I want to hear about better have a meme attached to it."
It's just constant self-promotion for more memes. This is incredible.
The entire page is Bernie Sanders being like a selfish, like, meme hoarder.
A meme hoarder. All right, this is great. I mean,
Incredibly, it is still legal to fire someone for looking at memes on the job. That is unacceptable and must change.
did you ever see the George Costanza and George Steinbrenner Bernie Sanders thing?
No, I have not.
Oh God. Okay, do yourself a favor. Look at maybe I can find it when we wrap the show. But it's so funny. It's because on Seinfeld it would always show the back of Steinbrenner. You'd never show his face, and it's just his desk in the imposing room, and George kind of walks in sheepishly. George, no. And he does this thing, and he speaks so similar to Bernie Sanders that they kind of dubbed this thing where it's Bernie Sanders talking as George Steinbrenner to Costanza, and he's interspersing different speeches. And dude, you got to watch it. But anyway, I think it's just going to make the whole political process more fun. And for someone like me, I don't want to say I've given up because I got to be hopeful. I got to believe that there's some light at the end of the tunnel. But I've kind of given up, hoping that politics is going to make any damn bit of difference. Maybe my pessimism will give way as we get a little closer. But it's at least going to be way more entertaining this election cycle, and that's something that I'm excited about, of course. But are there a couple candidates? Would you say that any candidate that the Democrats have in their roster, is there anyone in their bullpen that would make a good president, in your opinion?
They've gotten rid of all the reasonable ones.
Yeah.
All the reasonable ones were kicked out in the first couple days. Look, so I probably wouldn't end up voting for a Democrat, period. But I actually thought that despite his complete inability to speak to other humans, Lincoln Chafee actually brought a relatively reasonable message, which was his motto was prosperity through peace. And he was saying, look, what's happened to us, right? The Democrats don't represent an anti-war constituency anymore, and that's something that they used to have that maybe the old Democratic Party I would have respected. And now we've got Hillary Clinton, who's more of a war hawk than most of the Republicans. And, they asked, well, how would you not be in a third Obama term? And his answer was like, well, I wouldn't blow up hospitals.
That was one of the most amazing moments. That was so cringeworthy and good. But didn't they go after those hospitals again? And now you're hearing stories that they were actually shooting people as they were running. What the hell was going on at this hospital?
So I need to read more about this. So this is totally unconfirmed. But what I was reading was that there was another hospital attacked by what would presumably be U.S. allies in Yemen, and that as people were exiting the hospital, there were additional targeted strikes to stop those people from escaping. So I need to read more about it to have any kind of a definitive opinion. I can say, with complete certainty that the original airstrike against Doctors Without Borders was completely unacceptable. And honestly, we're probably going to read that this is a pretty similar tragedy, although it sounds like it was not perpetrated by the U.S. Military in this particular case. But quite likely it's allies, quite likely people who are funded or supported by the United States.
It's such a mess. And we could do another couple hours on that. But as we wrap it up then, so the reasonable people on the left are gone. Although they did...
I would also point out Jim Webb as someone who, again, would I vote for him? Probably not. But I think that he went against the grain of the Democratic Party. I think he was the Democrat who stood up and, he said he was willing to defend gun rights and on a number of other topics, he was willing to go against the tide, and that's why they kind of spit him right out. He sounded too much like a Republican or like an independent, and they basically anybody who isn't left or really far left doesn't get to belong there. They don't take that kind of any level of reasonable or kind of digressing from the main party platform.
So, on the right, are there a couple that you would love to see just get out of the way already? Are there a few that you're just you've already had it with? Are there a few that are left?
Sure. So Rand Paul's really hanging on. He's going to be on that main debate stage on the Fox Business / Wall Street Journal debate, and I'm excited to see him there. But he's number 8. They let 8 people be on it. They cut out Christie. They cut out Huckabee from the main stage. And so Paul's in last relative to that. I think that what could happen to him will be sort of similar to his father. I mean, once he's out, I don't think that anybody has to compete on a libertarian sort of playing field. I think that when he was in there, even if he doesn't win, and by all measures he probably won't or can't, but him being there makes them have to accept, all right, we've got to talk about the small government stuff a little bit in between the warmongering. So
that's the role he plays.
They had to compete with him to be, his brand of conservative a little bit. He went on an interview recently where he said, I'm the only conservative running because, all these other people, they call themselves conservatives, but they want to increase military spending. And you can't say that you're a conservative and then want to increase the most expensive thing we do. With him there, I think that the conversation can be more interesting, but he doesn't get really the time of day to talk, and I'm not sure that he's been broadcasting his message as effectively as his father did. With the other candidates, I've been slowly getting a bit disappointed by most of them. I gotta say, maybe this is a trap. Maybe you won't like me for this. I actually really liked Ben Carson for a while, but he's disappointed me so much.
I mean, were you suspecting that I was going to be disappointed that you found Carson interesting?
Ben Carson at any point?
No, I raised my hand. I mean, I haven't made an opinion on. Okay, I've made plenty of opinions, but I haven't made a final decision on anybody. He says a lot of things. His delivery method is very stable, which is the anti-Trump. He brings different things to the table. He's not a politician. He had a couple years doing guest spots on Fox and stuff, little check-ins, but no, a lot of interesting stuff. And then of course the pyramid things, and what was he swinging a hammer and trying to stab somebody as a kid? And
there was the hammer thing. There was, the thing. I think the exact.
What the hell was that all about?
I don't know enough about that story to comment. The pyramid thing was kind of dumb. The thing that actually, the very specific moment that I said, this isn't my candidate anymore, was when he was on CNN and he said to Jake Tapper that evidence of homosexuality being a choice is that people go into prison straight and that they come out gay. And he was like, and therefore we can't have marriage equality. And I get that the people on the Republican stage have to be for traditional marriage and all of that, and I don't think it's worth really that being a party issue anymore because it's basically been decided and it's not going back. But the absolute non-sensitivity of the way that he said that.
Well, that would be a lack of political awareness, where even if you did read a study and you did actually delve into a clinical journal that did talk about people that, they're just horny and then they go into prison and there's nothing else there and they say, whatever, I'll give you a hand job. You know what, I'll do it, but I'll close my eyes. I'm sure those things happen. And I get that there's probably a study that's been conducted over 2,500 inmates in the rural, upstate New York, blah, 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 penitentiary system. I'm sure that there's a nugget of truth in there, or something. But it's just the lack of political awareness to not even go there, or to double down on that once you're. But that's the Trump method. You double down. Yeah, you don't like a professional politician until you see the rookie mistakes, and you go, oh, that one's going to hurt.
It spoke, again, if he personally has an objection to gay marriage, it takes points away from him from a liberty perspective, but I can forgive him for it. With him saying something like that, it's not, I don't think it's conducive to someone being a leader. And when I think he gets out there in the general election, right, any Democrat can kick his ass on saying, look at this thing he said on CNN, this guy's an idiot. And they could get the people who are in the middle to say, yeah, that was really dumb.
Yeah, and the whole West Point thing seems a little ridiculous to me. I as much as I've researched it, I'm trying to hold back a full opinion because I haven't had a chance to really dig in too deeply, but I don't know. I think there is a very concerted effort to destroy Carson and destroy him now, and you see it coming from every angle. And some of the things like the West Point thing seem ridiculous to me. I mean, to think it was impossible that he had a conversation about getting an all expenses experience at West Point. Call it a scholarship, call it not a scholarship, even though on their page it refers to it as a scholarship today, per my understanding, of course. That one just seems totally fabricated, is my point. My thing with Carson, I guess, would be just the lack of understanding, combining the politics with the health of decriminalizing. At least let's start with marijuana and really take a look at what happens there. You know, if people want to go to all the other stuff, okay, that's a next level discussion. You know, fine, but let's fight that battle another day. I just, knowing what the drug cartels are capable of and how all this dirty money is killing people by the tens of thousands, if not globally in the millions, it doesn't make sense to fight what we're doing. The drug war doesn't make sense, and for Ben Carson to weigh the medicinal aspect of it, which he's highly qualified, blend his political opinion together and say, yeah, we need to continue enforcing this, that's a disconnect to me where I can't add 2 and 2 and get 5. I can't do it on that issue. That's one of my biggest problems with Carson.
Absolutely, and you know, there are so many things. I think I liked him before he became a politician. I love reading his columns in the Washington Times, which is, you know, not always the best, but it's one of my favorite actual print newspapers. Not Washington Post, by the way, Washington Times. He writes columns for them very often. They often are very informative, very reasonable. But sometimes, you know, he gets out there, you know, running for president, and he says some dumb shit. This one hasn't been brought to many people's attention. It hasn't gotten the news' attention much, but I watched a speech by him where he said that the theory of evolution, he believes, was promoted by the adversary. Literally, Ben Carson, on video to a group of students, said that the theory of evolution is promoted by Satan.
Was it a like a Christian college or something? One of those paid to speak events at?
I'd have to look into it. That could be a quick Google.
I'd be curious to see which group it was, because you know Hillary brings out her Southern accent when she talks to certain groups. It's so it just made me slimy even thinking about her goofy Southern accent. But you know, a lot of times you play to the people in the room. But yeah, I mean, how you can look at, you know, I don't see how you can. I don't know. The Bible's an interesting thing. Religion is an interesting thing. And I think if you take everything for being 4,000 years old, and everything has to be perfectly written despite all of the edits and all of the censorship that's happened with the Council of Nicaea and all the way back before that, I don't know. It makes it tough to, especially a man of science, a man who's a doctor. You know, you're kind of dealing with this is the bone, this is the ligament, this is how things work, this is what it is, and then to read a book that, you know, it maybe there's a lot of truth in there, maybe it's mostly true, but I mean, to go down those paths and yeah, like the dinosaurs were put there to test your faith, and it's just, all right, guys, give up the ghost on that. You know, like I'm not seeing how a God that I believe in is gonna. I don't know, man. I wish I had more words for that. I'm thinking 9 things at once here. Save me.
You know, and there's freedom of religion. People have the right to have whatever beliefs they want. But when that guy's running for president, you know, I have the right to not vote for that guy, and that's okay.
So Rand is not performing. Are you surprised Rand is not performing as any better?
You know, I think it's a combination of a couple things. I met him about a month before he announced his campaign, and that was when it was when I was working at Fox, and he came because he was going to be speaking on the record with Greta, and he was enthusiastic. He was a little bit more fiery then, and you know, I think he still is. He still has this sort of personal flair for it, but I think the problem is that the media really, really tries to shut him out. I think that people try to misrepresent him or kind of underrepresent him, right? He got so little time to speak at that CNBC debate. It was, unbelievable. And I mean, similar things happened to Paul. It was hard to ignore Paul because he was getting a lot of Ron Paul. I mean, the same thing happened to Ron Paul in 2012. And I remember Jon Stewart pointing out that you had polls that were showing the first, third, and fourth place person that they just wouldn't show Ron Paul on the screen.
Which is so disingenuous. It's so blatantly censored and filthy. It's just, I don't know. I have a little hope, Ford. I have a little bit of hope that because we can expose so much of their bullshit, that the lies they used to be able to tell and get away with, Jeb can't fix that. Jeb can't fix that. I don't think that their dirty tricks are going to work this time around. But then again, it ain't helping Rand very much. And even, it's right. Interesting. Even with Donald Trump, I've seen him scale his stuff way back. I thought he sucked at the last debate. Drudge poll. Trump won. I'm like, Trump won? No, realistically, thinking about this, Ted Cruz won. Ted Cruz had that just pretty badass. It was Glenn Beck pointed out the instant recall that he had, reciting back all of the stupid questions asked to all of the panelists, all of the debaters, and he named them off in order, and he just blasted them. It was the loudest applause of the night, and it kind of made me look at Ted Cruz again and go, all right, Ted, you might be Canadian, wink, wink, but I'll consider you a little bit more. He moved up the charts for me on that one. Do you have thoughts on Cruz?
Yeah, so, I think that Ted Cruz is a principled conservative. I think that he is capturing some of the sort of libertarian hearts and minds. I think that he's, for a really principled libertarian who at the same time feels committed to the Republican Party, I think that Ted Cruz is the very clear second choice. I do think that he still is a military hawk in a way that is a little bit scared, where he's a little bit scared to deviate from the rest of the party on that particular point, and I think that that's where his conservatism loses its consistency. But as far as which of these guys is actually going to scale back the government, I think that he's probably the closest one to it. And I think that actually when we talk about Cruz relative to a few years ago when he had this enormous spectacle over Obamacare, people really considered him something of a whimsical kind of cartoon character of a politician. And if you said back then, oh, Ted Cruz is going to run for president and he'll be one of the front runners, and people will perceive him as people are kind of between Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio as the winners of this debate, but and he'll kind of win debates. People would kind of look at you funny, like you've got a few heads. And they'd especially look at you funny if you said, oh, and Trump will be the front runner.
Right, of course.
But, so I think that he's done a good job of rebranding to seem sane, but at the same time, that's also caused him to boil down a little bit. And I think that he's abandoned some of his more fiery rhetoric that I think it would have excited me about him. Before he started running. So I think we'll see with him. He could kind of go in one of two directions. He could end up looking very establishment, or he could kind of steal the Rand Paul crowd if Rand ends up out of it. And I think the very weird thing I've been seeing, and I'm not sure what to make of this yet, is that I think within the race, Trump and Cruz are kind of opposite ends of the Republican wing. Cruz is a little bit more liberty-minded, and Trump is a little bit more big government, red meat minded. And at the same time, Cruz refuses to go up there and bash Trump. There's a very clear allyship there. I've seen Cruz go to rallies with Trump. They've spoken together on a number of issues, and they stick together on stuff. And a lot of people are reading into this as, Trump might drop out and give Cruz all his support, right? That's how Cruz wins the nomination, is by Trump saying, I want Cruz to be the president of the United States.
As opposed to a president, vice president kind of dealie?
There could be something like that, but think about a general election. You've got Hillary Clinton and some other maybe slightly more to her left, but some other relatively centrist kind of clear-cut
who do you
like
think
Democrat candidate.
who do you think she would take? Like that Julian Castro from Houston or something?
Maybe Raul Castro. No, no, I don't know the Democratic side quite as well. I've seen a few people talk about who the VP would be, and I forget who the front runner was. I don't even recognize the name of the person, but a lot of people have been using the same name. I wouldn't know.
I just don't see Trump as the type of person that would quit when you see the finish line. Even if he might have had intentions of going halfway and then just, okay, I'm gonna suspend my campaign for. I think he can smell it now. He's been the front runner long enough. He's already, measured the office for curtains. I think he's already gonna do an expansion and add 17 floors to the White House. He's gonna come in and renovate that thing. It's a dump.
I think if Trump actually got into the general election, I do think that Cruz would be a very likely vice president pick. But I mean, that's so far away.
Look, I love the Latinos. I love the Latinos. I have one as my VP. Give me a break. Come on. I could hear it now.
I think that's when you you can't be sure about kind of what's going on with it. He's like, oh, we gotta do something about all those mosques. But then he recently was like, I love the Muslims. Sometimes he just sounds like a loud political grandpa. Where he's all over, he'll say something, oh, they're coming over here, they're rapists, da-da-da, and then he's like, I love Latinos. I will win the Latino vote.
Yeah, it's Uncle Donald at Thanksgiving dinner. That's essentially what we got here.
Uncle Donald.
He's had a few too many eggnogs, kids.
He was I think he was, like all of these other guys, I liked him before he was a politician. I've lost so much respect for Donald Trump since he started running for president. I really respected him as a businessman, and now I'm not even as sure about him as a businessman.
Yeah, I started the first debate ready to give Trump 10 minutes, and I was ready to instantly disregard him. And yeah, he's been less than polished on several occasions, and of course, you could probably make a case that he. Like they asked Hillary, well, are you literally willing to say anything to get elected? Plenty of those moments as well. But I love what he's brought to the race. I love it. Have I decided who I'm voting for? No, I haven't decided any of that. But I love what Donald Trump has brought to the race. And frankly, growing up, I remember in Ohio, that where I'm from, September 11th, and there's this attack, and you're trying to figure out what's going on. And in the years to follow, 2002, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, you know how astonished I was to find out that you didn't have to show your ID at the door to the United States, that you could just waltz in, you could just climb underneath a rickety screen door or some sort of chain link fence, you just clip, 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 walk in. I had no idea that our country was this porous, and being a former promoter, you know what? You show your ID and make sure you're over 21 because we serve alcohol in here. You're paying your cover charge because this stuff costs money. Come on in and be a part of the party. Come on. That's how I think about our country. It's like if you want to be here, do it the right way. Go through the front door, not the back door. Pay your money because everything, I got to pay the sound guy. I got to pay the doorman. I got to pay the security guy, and I'm trying to make money myself. And I love that Trump has put an emphasis and some sort of trying to bring some sanity to our immigration thing. I couldn't believe it's been this way for this long. I'd never paid attention to it as much as I have recently. But, I love that he's brought attention to that issue. Because I think if someone wants to assimilate and be here and pay their way and contribute and be awesome, then come on in. But if there's all these other motivations and if it's so easy to sneak bad people and bad stuff in, man, I'm thrilled that Trump got in. No idea how I'm ultimately gonna shake out with all this. Third party was my choice last time. We'll see how it goes this time. But so I guess then rank your top 5. Go through your top 5 on the Republican side.
I would say that to use your kind of buzzword with your assessment of Trump in kind of a positive light, I've got to agree to disagree with you on him. But if I had to go through my top 5, so I think Rand Paul is my very clear number 1. Are we talking top 5 Republicans or top 5 just general?
Well, I mean, let's go Republican Democrat, because nobody on the Democrat side is gonna even place. Nobody's gonna win you any money at the track.
If you said top 5 Democrats, then you forced me to put Hillary Clinton at number 3.
Who are your top Democrats then, with all the reasonable ones gone?
Right. Yeah. That's like when it's Jeb versus Hillary, and you say who are your top 2.
I heard that joke. People that didn't like the Yankees and sick of seeing it. Nah, I'm not even going to tell that story. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay. So Rand Paul is a very clear number 1. I'll put in parentheses or as number 1.5 that Gary Johnson, for the Libertarian Party, or probably whoever the Libertarian Party spits out, would be a number 2. I think Ted Cruz is the clear second choice for Libertarians. When I look at the rest of the stage, I think Rubio has gotten people excited. I think that he's a bit, fresher, maybe more exciting, that maybe he's probably a little bit more reasonable, a little bit more small government than the rest of them. So I guess I'd say a Rubio would be a number 3, followed by Carson. And I guess at number 5, I'd probably put Kasich, as he is certainly by no means a libertarian, but I do think that he has a little bit more of a willingness towards reasonability, and I think a little bit more of a detraction away from the religious right, because as far as I'm sort of concerned, when you get into the Huckabees or the Santorums, you're talking about these big war hawks / really religious, fundamental Christians in a way that is not positive for actually protecting religious liberty, right? I think that true sort of Rand Paul constitutional conservative libertarianism is what protects people of faith, and I think that what you'd call the religious right or the political right when it comes to religiosity is sort of dangerous from a libertarian perspective. Right-leaning theocracy is quite the opposite of kind of right-leaning liberty.
Yeah, it does divert there, and I've interviewed Huckabee. We talked exclusively about music, go figure. But and I like him on a personal level. But yeah, it's just that extra religious kick, and I'm fiscally conservative, socially libertarian, and pro-capitalist, and it's that socially libertarian where it's like, I'm not even saying that's the right way to live. I say personally, live as conservative as you want. But to govern a country this large, you kind of have to have a socially libertarian stance. However, I gotta say, those Planned Parenthood videos are really difficult to try to pretend it's okay to be libertarian on abortion. Because I usually say, do whatever you want as long as you don't harm anybody else. And it's like,
right.
These are little people that are literally being chopped up and put. It's like a Saw movie. It's like a horror movie.
I'll give you the libertarian. So I personally, I will never go on the radio and say, which side of that I'm on. But I would say that from having been in a lot of libertarian spaces, that I've seen a lot of people who will make the case that libertarianism does apply to abortion because the baby has, or the fetus or whatever, has the right to life, liberty, the same way that a born person does. So many people will say, I'm a pro-life libertarian in the sense that I think that it deserves the same protection. So I wouldn't necessarily say that being pro-abortion or being pro-choice is necessarily a libertarian position. I think it's one where libertarianism can be ambiguous, or it requires more characterization. Whereas taxation, there's no question how libertarians feel about that one.
Yeah, and I could see, but and that's my point. I could legitimately see both points being made. It's easy to just kind of refer to it as a clump of tissue or something, or a fetus instead of a baby, and kind of absolve the concept that it is a living, breathing thing, a creature that could survive outside of the womb, especially with the machines they can be hooked up to these days and taken care of. It's hard to argue that it's not viable outside of the body. But I mean, legitimately, I can see it from both sides. I've had in-depth conversations with people who have had abortions. I get both sides of it, but I would probably agree that the Santorums and the Huckabees, that's just a little too far out of field. Although I like a lot of what some of them have to say, and I think Huckabee's a great communicator. He's got to take that weight off. He put on a lot of weight on that TV show. He got too comfortable, and it's a visual medium running for president. This thing, but he really distills issues down into basic, easy to understand concepts, bumper stickers, meme speak, if you will, just like any good pastor will. Every church I went to that was worth a damn, it wasn't being blah, blah, blah in a different language. Like, seriously, I'm getting nothing out of. It was the people that could take some story about Jesus and relate it back to... So when you're at your backyard having a barbecue and your neighbor comes over and he wants to use his spatula, or what, like just something basic, and you go, oh, I understand the story now because you brought it home for me. Huckabee's a very good communicator in that regard, but he's not really getting any traction either.
Right, and so I think that this is the distinction, though, which is that being personally conservative or having those values or even advocating those values is different from advocating them as a head of state. For example, I personally have made the choice in my life that I'm against using drugs myself, and I think that drugs generally have a negative effect on society when they're used, and I'm going to stay away from them. And so you might call that a personally, socially conservative point of view. However, from a policy point of view, I happen to be drug libertarian, which is that at the same time I know that I don't have the right to initiate force against people because of what they choose to put into their own body. And I think that that's the distinction that's lost on the religious right as opposed to the constitutional libertarian right, where somebody like Huckabee would say, these are my values, this is what I think is good for society, and, that's fine, that's nice to have as a religious leader or a preacher, but then there's a big difference when that guy goes up there and says, this is what's best for society, and that's why I'm going to use the government to enforce it.
Yeah, and, hence why I just go libertarian on that stuff. It's like, hey, if there's a God, and if you happen to believe in it or not, we'll all find out when we die, and if there's a God that has a problem with some of this stuff, you'll have your conversation with him, her, or it, and as will I. And you do your thing, I'll do mine. It's just really that abortion one is just so tricky because every time you want to it could be like, and then you go, well, but then I see the other side too, and that's why it's just like hands up, hands off. I'm just gonna live my life and do my thing personally. And I think I can't stand Santorum. He's
old news. He should drop out.
Yeah, Carly Fiorina, she kind of peaked but didn't really do. I don't know. Is she a goner too?
So I think I was a little bit more excited about Fiorina before, and I think that again I really respect her as a person, and I think the thing that's disappointed me about her campaign actually is that I think she spent a little bit too much time talking about herself relative to Hillary Clinton. She's been going out there and she's been talking a lot about this is why I'm not Clinton, this is why I'm going to beat Clinton, this is why I'm better than Clinton. And I think she has a hard time portraying herself as this is me as an individual and this is what I stand for. And I'd like to see more of that out of her. And I get that she knows what quotes are going to get driven by the media. Look at this, the Republican woman who is running as the anti-Hillary Clinton. That's going to make headlines on HuffPo. And she knows that, and that's why she's doing it. But for me personally, I don't think that talking about what you're not is as valuable. I'd prefer to see her talking about who she is. And I think that it's starting to lose steam because all of the Republicans are talking about how much they hate Hillary Clinton. And it's not building as much momentum anymore. We've all pretty much established, if you're watching this debate and you're thinking about any of these candidates, you're probably not taking that other one. So I think that she's losing steam, and she
Well,
would really need to get people excited.
Well,
yeah.
I would say that Trump has brought a different level of interest. In fact, he's going to be on Saturday Night Live. Is that this weekend? He's supposed to be on tomorrow? Man, that's going to be must.
Did he say yes to that?
Oh, God,
I know that he was invited.
Yeah. No, there's a big thing
Trump's
there. There's some headhunters offering $5,000 if you can disrupt the taping. It's some pro illegal. It's a group of people saying we should be allowed to go wherever we want, and it's like I want to go to Disney too, but I got to go through the gate and pay the admission. Like, come on. But anyway, these people are putting together a campaign to pay $5,000 if you can disrupt Donald Trump's taping of Saturday Night Live. People are boycotting. People are urging NBC to kick him off of the show. How dare you allow such hate speech? And it's like, okay. All right. Yeah, so that's going on. But
I think SNL is exactly where he belongs.
You don't like him at all. What is the number? What are the two biggest things you dislike about Trump now? Just out with it. Two of them.
So I think that my biggest thing is that he turned this election into a bit of a side or into too much of a show. I think that his rhetoric creates this as what's his face from Texas called it. Rick Perry called him a cancer on conservatism. And I think, for example, his rhetoric on illegal immigration, right? You can certainly, I think that there's the perspective that says, we have to seal the border, and we have to be tough on immigration and then let in the legal ones, and that's totally a valid political position, and I think that that's a strong position that the Republican Party can run on. When Trump goes out there and he says they're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, I think that he is starting to fall into the scapegoatism as opposed to talking about the actual issue. And then,
that was one of his initial missteps. That was when I said he was very inarticulate. He came back and either walked it back or said it a different way. And maybe he did intentionally say it that way so that he could then walk it back and clarify after he made the point. Who knows? And if that's the case, he's a better showman and a better ratings grabber and a better ability to get attention. Right. It's like the Million Mask March, walking in the middle of the freeway to get attention. Maybe it's not the right thing to do, but it's the most effective way to do it. Yeah, and I hated that about that phrase because all you got to say, of course, Kate Steinle happened after he had said that. But there's any single murder, DUI, drive-by shooting, anything horrible that happens in this country from an illegal alien that snuck in here, they're all preventable. Those people should not have ever been here. And if we're not vetting who do you allow in, you can't go to you can't go to a football game anymore without, you have to have a clear purse and everything is searched out. It's like they got the damn TSA at the gates. It's like you can't even go to a baseball game without getting searched. You got to have your ticket. You had to pay for it to get in. It's like I expect at least that much out of our immigration system. So yeah, Trump saying they're rapists and murderers. Okay, I don't legitimately think he was saying 100% of Mexicans are rapists and murderers. That's why no Mexican should ever be like.
And that's why he said, and some I assume are good people. He did. Yeah, he did make the clarification that you just made. But in my opinion, I don't think that was enough.
I wouldn't have done it that way.
Conservative approach to talking about these issues.
The libertarian approach is there should be open borders. No borders anywhere, man. Peace. It's like, okay.
So,
there's that too. So, it's like I'm with. That's the beauty of politics. Who's right, who's wrong, I don't know, but who's in charge, calling the shots. And that's what we're trying to sort out here. And yeah, I think Trump would bring a perhaps unnecessary level of wild card, unnecessary risk of stupidity to the office, where a brash argument between Rosie O'Donnell or Putin could end in, I don't know, a lawsuit or World War III. So
yeah, there you go.
That's a legitimate concern with Trump, and I think he's been scaling back some of his rhetoric now. either saying, I'm in front, I just got to shut up and coast to this lead. I got this. Don't say anything stupid, Donald. Wait till you're there and unleash fury on the world. You know, maybe he's doing that, or maybe he's actually gotten better at this and he's a quick learner, a super intelligent guy, and he'd be a great president. I don't know. Am I willing to call it now? No, I will not. I can't make a determination on that yet.
You said to give you two, so
I did. You're like, come on, man, Brian, shut up. I got like 20 of these. I gotta get to this.
Right? Yeah. No, I guess I have a few. I'll give a quick 1.5 so that I can really sneak in 3. The second one would be he's flip flopped on so many. I mean, you watch these interviews in the past where he said, "Oh, the country's done better under the Democrats economically." He was asked, "What do you think about health care?" And he said, "I'm a liberal on health care. We got to take care of people." So he. In terms of his actual political positions, you know, and you just expressed, for example, a pro-life position, and in the past he was pro-choice until he was pro-life, and I'm not saying that either one of those things is wrong, but I don't think that he really represents republicanism. He's just been able to go up there and appeal to the Republicans and appeal to their very accurate hatred of mainstream politics. I think that he's appealing to them on a level that's very primal, but actually looking at his policies, I don't think that he's conservative or kind of Republican in any way. I guess I'd ask you the question: what has he said on that stage that to you evokes conservatism? What has he said out there that was, we're going to scale this thing back? Where has the government shrinking been proposed by Trump?
I would go back to the border. I would say the conservatives that have been saying, hey, there's a rule of law. This is the land of unbridled opportunity. Everybody in America has the equal opportunity to succeed if you're willing to work hard, blah, 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 blah. They have been telling us that they were going to secure this. But for George Bush, after getting attacked in 2001, regardless of what we now think might have happened over there, because that's a whole other show in and of itself, to leave the southern border wide open for the rest of his term tells me everything I need to know. And watching Obama do nothing but set up freight trains to deliver them on an hourly basis to flood the Southwest last year, watching it be exported through Syria and happening all over Europe now. This is a plan. This is a coordinated plan, and it doesn't make sense to me. I want the people here on my team, and I don't want the bad guys in. You know, there's a bouncer at a club for a reason. If they got any contraband on them that shouldn't be in the club, don't let it in the club. And we need to run it like a business. And so, I mean, I legitimately think that Donald Trump could start running this country like a business and just checking who's coming in and who's... But the one thing I've heard about the wall that changed it for me, my strong support of the wall, I'm more lukewarm than I ever have been, because I've been a huge advocate of a impenetrable border wall for my whole life.
All right.
I don't like the fact that could also hold us in, given how things are going in this country. That kind of creeped me. I don't know if it was Jesse Ventura or somebody. They mentioned that, and it creeped me out, and I went, oh. Okay, so it would be harder for me to get out if I wanted to get out. That's interesting.
Yeah, he's saying, oh, the Mexicans will build it for us, or the Mexicans will pay for it. I mean, by your own rhetoric, you know, yeah, maybe it's to keep you out of Mexico. But that actually, I just asked, oh, what about Trump is about building smaller government, and you're like, he's going to build a great big wall.
No, and that's fair, but the Republican stance for
small government.
No, but no, I would disagree, and the reason I would disagree, there are a lot of people, especially people uneducated, people that have not been through high school, not been through college, don't have a strong resume to put out there and jump into the workforce, people that only speak English as a second language, if at all. I think the flood of people coming into this country that are not contributing to the system right away, I think that's putting a huge burden on our social welfare services, from hiring more teachers and more emergency room visits, this, that, and the other. I think calming that down is a conservative thing to calm down the social welfare system.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and you might not agree with that, but just average. Looking at the law of averages, it would be hard for me to get a job in Germany if I can't speak the language. And let's just pretend I never went to school, or maybe I did, but it's just going to be a challenge, and I show up with nothing but the clothes on my back. I'm probably going to put my hand out and go, is there some local service that can help get me on my feet? And that's cool, but that costs money. And when it's like you guys at the Million Mask March, you walk past a homeless dude, it's like, stop. I want to take care of this guy, and I want to take care of that veteran over there with PTSD, instead of people that are just, tunneling under a wall or jumping over a fence or hopping in the back of a pickup truck and coming over here and taking things. I would rather take care of the people we have currently than adding hundreds of thousands, if not 10, 15 million, depending on which estimates you believe, of people flooding into this country, and now we got to take care of them. Not all of them, but there's a lot of them. And I think our social services should really be kind of restricted to those that are physically disabled, have a mental issue, or are veterans. And we got to take care of those. And when the VA can't even take care of our vets, they're dying on fake waiting lists over in Phoenix. I mean, I want to take care of them before I take care of some illegal alien that just broke into the country through the back door. And they're here now. Now they want free drinks at the club. I'm making the analogy again back to my nightclub. But it's like they just snuck in the back door, and then they want free drinks. And it's like, not only are you a liability because you could be under 21 and we could lose our liquor license, not only did you avoid paying cover like everybody else who waited in line, and now you're trying to take free stuff from us. I use that analogy, and I cannot understand why we support an open border. And I think it is a conservative value to stop the hemorrhaging of having an open border for those reasons. Go ahead. Now disagree. Break it apart. How many ways
you're
I'm
right.
wrong?
So I agree to disagree. And again, I know that this is the position of the Republican Party. And, of course, that I said my number one's Rand Paul. Rand Paul is saying, seal the border first. But I think I look at the difference between Paul and Trump in the way that they're talking about it. And even if Paul is also saying seal the border, Paul's also not going out there and saying they're rapists, they're bringing drugs, all this stuff. I think that he has a much more conservative approach to talking about it. And again, I think that while you can certainly say that it's a Republican value, and maybe there's an argument that it's a conservative value, I don't think that on its face that was actually a policy of contracting government. I haven't seen him do that. My other point on the other thing of Trump that I don't like is that I'm really not convinced that he actually understands the issues sort of the world. I listened to one radio show of his where he was asked, Donald Trump, can you tell me the difference between Hamas and Hezbollah? And he said no. He really couldn't. And he said, you're asking me a trick question. And, to your viewers or to you, and to the normal American person might not know the difference here, which is that Hamas is the leadership in Palestine. Hezbollah is sort of a more ambiguous organization that is also sort of allied with Hamas and throughout the region, and they're both considered proxies of Iran. And relative to the current economic or political landscape, they'd both be considered enemies of the U.S., or at least not allies of the U.S. And at their worst, that they'd be considered terrorist organizations. Trump couldn't explain the difference. On live radio, he said, I think you're asking an unfair question. And this was conservative radio. This wasn't MSNBC going at him with a trick question. This wasn't anybody trying to go after him. This was somebody who actually basically supported him, who was talking to him and was basically on his side. But he was like, I don't think this is a trick question. And when he asked Carly Fiorina, can you tell the difference between these two organizations? Fiorina was able to explain it right then. And I look at the two of them, they're both business leaders, right? These are both people who aren't in politics, who have not spent their life on world affairs. But in terms of actual kind of intelligence and knowledge of the issues, I think that Fiorina and many of the other candidates are just more informed. And basically Trump's answer, he started to go off on further on it. He was like, by the time I'm president, all these guys, they'll all be dead and moved around in any way. So he basically said it's not worth my time to understand these issues now. And he was like, I promise you, I will be the best foreign policy president on day one. I'll be briefed by all the best advisors. They're going to tell me everything I need to know, and I'm going to know exactly what to do. and I will be the best president, the best foreign policy president.
Once again, I understand how that's absurd. I get it. And Carly Fiorina strikes me as somebody, I mean, you don't end up at the head of HP accidentally. She's studied, she's crammed, she gets all of her data, she puts it into this wonderful presentation, and she's very powerful, she's very precise, she's very articulate, she has a plan, she's practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced. But, you know, I think there's something... So I give you that point. I get how Carly, who studies up on some of these issues, can just put something awesome out there, and I get it. But on the flip side, I also understand what Trump's saying in respect to, I don't have all the national security information. I get what you're allowing me to get. No, I don't understand all of the deepest and darkest intricacies of the Palestinian and Israeli conflict. I don't get all of that stuff yet. Give me the time with all of your best advisors. Let's go over what's going on as much as we know, and let's figure out a game plan based on that. And he might be a good head coach, not knowing who his team is going to be. Some people can coach Team USA, in the Olympics, and they're not familiar with the players as much, or you only get a limited time to practice, but you figure it out on the fly. Maybe he could do that. I get your point. I concede that point. But I wouldn't expect him to know everything about that. I think if you quickly ask somebody about the 18th Amendment, I think you could stump a couple people quicker than Rick Perry for getting the third major point that he practiced and practiced and practiced, and he forgot number 3. That was tough. That's a hard one to bounce back from. But, I see it from both sides, and trust me, I don't have my Trump bumper sticker or hat. I've loved the energy he brought in, and I get how you can make the points you've made, because they are all valid. I would just offer, the caveat that they could also be valid with the caveat, like I was saying, that what he's saying could be absurd, but on the other hand, it might be this way. I don't know, man. I mean, I'm not looking for a savior or a messiah necessarily. I'm just hoping we can do something that's going to help this country kind of get back on track. I just feel like the amount of money that we're spending. You're just looking for someone
who can make America great again.
Honest, I avoided going there like 3 times. I was like, wait, I'm almost...
You were trying so hard not to say his slogan.
All right, I have his bumper sticker and a hat. No, I'm kidding. I really don't. But I think a businessman could turn this country around.
Trump paid you to have me on his program.
Yes, Trolling for Trump, Part 3. No, I think a businessman would be fantastic, yet I never trusted Romney, and I would... A venture capitalist to turn around a bankrupt country? Holy crap, that's the perfect resume of the theoretical candidate that this country needed 4 years ago. I didn't vote for him. I never trusted the BS he was slinging. Something about him, I just couldn't, I just didn't believe it. Something about Trump, I just have a hunch that, all right, turn this thing around. Go, you got 4 years. You're now the GM and the president of this football team. Turn the Cleveland Browns around. I'm tired of them sucking. And it's like, all right, now you get a chance. Let's see. So I mean, I give a little bit of leeway, because if somebody point blank asked me, we're going to talk about ISIL, and we're going to talk about the Free Syrian Army, and we're going to talk about Kazakhstan and this, that, and the other. There's so much going on over there, and it's so convoluted. I could easily imagine saying, half of these guys are going to be dead in a couple years anyway, or by the time I take office anyway. Sit me down with all the military leaders. Let's hash this out, because I know I'm only getting a partial piece of the information. And we'll develop a plan, That's what I'm running for. Hire me to develop a plan once I get all of the information. Because I would get stumped on that stuff. Granted, I'm not running for president either. And I understand that we should expect more out of the people. But, I can see where he's coming from, at least to a point on that. So, anyway, I get it. You're a Rand... Wait, I was starting to mark these down. Rand Paul, number 1. We had Ted Cruz, number 2. We had... Kasich was in there somewhere.
Rubio, I think number 5.
Rubio was before that.
I think I said Rubio 3, and I gave Carson 4, even if I'm disappointed.
Okay. All right. Well, let's do this. Because I think we could talk forever about this stuff. I do appreciate your time. I want to do a quick lightning round, real quick. When you were, we never wrapped up the KKK anonymous hamburger story. What brass tacks?
All right. Well, so that was basically they ended up making peace, and they didn't end up killing each other. The point that I was going to make with that, and so now this is like an hour ago.
Yes.
But, the people who were involved with that conflict have been talking to them now, and they have no idea who this new group is doing the anti-KKK stuff. And basically, the original creators of Op-KKK have said very outwardly, we have nothing to do with this. We don't know who these people are. So, granted, the point of Anonymous is that anybody can do it. Anybody can call themselves Anonymous and go out there and do it. But the actual Anons who were involved in a conflict with the Klan a year ago that I was sort of deeply in communication with, those are not the people who are doing this. So could they be legitimate? Yeah, maybe. But at the same time, as I look at the list that's being produced, and there are a lot of people on it who are, it's just a stupid accusation, right? You have gay Democratic mayors, and I don't mean gay pejoratively. I mean actual homosexual.
They're so gay over there. Those mayors are gay.
Yeah, no. I just wanted to be sure that the listeners didn't think that I was saying that in that way.
Homosexuals.
To my knowledge, I don't think that the Klan is taking any gay people right now. There were people on that list who, I think there was one mayor who is white, but he is married to an African American woman, and again, I don't think the Klan is
so
taking
that
too
guy.
many,
that guy has a black friend. I have a black friend. I can't be racist. Look, I got a black friend.
Actually, it's funny you say that. Frank Ancona, the leader of the Klan, so there was a documentary about his people that used a lot of News to Share footage.
Oh, his people, really, Ford? His people? I see what you're doing there.
Yeah, his Klan, and he actually, in it, he said, "I'm not a racist," and he showed his picture of him and a black friend. He's like, "Look at this, bam, not a racist, confirmed." And,
drops
anyway,
Mike. Hashtag drops Mike.
Right.
I talked to a black guy once. Come on, man. I'm cool.
Right. So I don't see somebody who is in an interracial marriage then turning around and joining the Klan. I think that it's a ridiculous accusation. So, are some of these leaks true? Are they fluffing it up with other people? Maybe, but it's at least part false. And knowing from that information sort of publicly, but also the information that I have personally, which is that the legitimate, respected internal members of Anonymous have nothing to do with it, that between those two things, I'm pretty sure that the whole thing's kind of a hoax.
Yeah, and that's my concern when there's decentralized, when there's no specific official leadership that anybody could hijack it and do any sort of goofy thing they want under the hashtag or the whatever hashtivism. Okay, Keystone Pipeline was vetoed. Real quick, what does it mean?
All right. So Keystone, I go back and forth on. Full disclosure, I used to work for the Charles Koch Institute, but so while I agree with a lot of things that they advocate for, I think that Obama rejected it for the wrong reasons, but I personally wasn't a big Keystone person, mostly because in part it relied on eminent domain.
Yeah, I think eminent domain should be like hitting the lottery. I don't think you should get fair market value. I understand that sometimes eminent domain might make sense, but I think if it does happen, there shouldn't be fair market value or something, that they try to strong arm you into half a fair market value. I think you should hit the freaking lottery, and it's like, hey, that sucks, but now you get to go live like a king for the rest of your life, and your grandkids are going to have free college and have a home waiting for them. I know, eminent domain sucks. I get it. But I can envision where it's necessary sometimes. Anyway, go ahead.
So yeah, I think it's a tough one, which is that the really purist libertarian in me would want to say no eminent domain, never. But if we must have it, there's the part of me that says, okay, if we have to have it, then it should be the best thing for them to really, really annul the damage of taking someone's property by force.
Yeah.
But then there's also the part of me that says if I'm gonna be a libertarian, then I also don't want to just be throwing money at people, right? So then we're saying, oh, we're stealing stuff and we're paying way too much for it. Those are both things libertarians don't like.
Is that why there are so many factions inside of the libertarian movement? Maybe more so than Republicans and Democrats.
Infighting, right? Everybody will sit around the campfire and circle jerk over Ron Paul. When you get into the Rand Pauls, the Ted Cruzes, all of this stuff, you get into the big tent libertarianism, they all start fighting with each other, yeah.
Would you say it's even more split, even more faction than Republicans and Democrats? Fractured, I think.
Probably. I think that could be true. I think that in large part that's because of the degree of onlineness, and I think it's also because the libertarian movement has slight party affiliation, where you have a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm a libertarian Republican, and then there are people who will go at you and be like, that's an oxymoron, right? If you're a real libertarian, then you have to want to abolish the whole damn thing, and it's like, and it gets into all this back and forth. I think that because it is a philosophy that can have real absolutism, fighting over how that absolutism would be applied is difficult. Whereas democratic republicanism or Republican democracy, I think that those values are consistent enough where it makes sense that there can be centrism between the two.
It's a lot like religion. There are so many factions. You know, the Catholicism, you go through every single. I want to say Lutheran. I kept saying libertarian, so my brain just broke down in the middle there. But you have all of these different versions. And in fact, that's you see it in the Islamic world too, where some people are moderate, some people are really aggressive, and nope, I'm going to read it by the letter, and my interpretation of this is this, and then someone else could be by the letter, but their interpretation's different, the Sunni, the Shia, and you get, you see a lot of that. I just find it interesting because there are a lot of factions. Libertarianism is very interesting because I guess the RNC puts out a platform. And the DNC puts out a platform, and they say, hey, here's our points of light. Here's our game plan. Here are our 20 core values. And it's out there and it's tangible. But then when you get into libertarianism, it's like, yes, leave me alone and let me be free. Well, except if you got to build a highway, and then I get that you can't have one person screw it up for 1 million. So what if you nope, you're acquiescing too much. You are not libertarian. So, I mean, it gets a little tricky and convoluted with that. But anyway, we can get into that a little bit more. Edward Snowden, we were at an event at Politicon, and we got to watch his interview with the Yes Men. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty incredible. With TPP and with Edward Snowden, let's take another complex issue and sum it up in another bullet point as we head out the door. The future of our internet, along with the spy apparatus and what's going on with Snowden and being ostracized for being a whistleblower. What do you see in the next 5 years for our internet? Because I think it's very important that we consider all of these things now, because we could wake up in a very different world without the advantages we appreciate and enjoy today.
So I think Snowden is an interesting case. I have not seen the specific interview that you're referring to, so I can't really respond to that specifically. But I think that the internet is getting more wary of issues regarding privacy and things like that, and also both privacy of the individual, but also the non-privacy of the state. And so the recent thing that I was sort of perplexed by, and that I actually personally know people involved in, was the hacking of the CIA director's emails, basically just to say, look, I did it. And I think that that's becoming increasingly prevalent. I think that Snowden is probably less relevant as a person and more relevant for the fact that the government can't really hide secrets so well. And probably more than Snowden, Julian Assange probably represents that. I almost said represents, like Julian Assange. That I think that Julian Assange represents that quite a bit. And so we have this generation of, right, we're talking about these hacktivists, right, the anonymous type people, which is circling us around with the Million Mask March and all.
Right.
But I think that the internet is increasingly becoming a revolutionary space where it's not, we don't fight with bullets anymore, we fight with code. And when I say we, I guess I mean us as a society. And in a way that's even happening internationally, where now you have, the Chinese are apparently hacking us all the time, and all this stuff is happening. And I think that secrecy is very much becoming a currency in that kind of war, both domestically and abroad. So Snowden's a very interesting character when it comes to that kind of thing because he outed a lot of this kind of tactics used on one side of it. But I think more than just what he exposed is that people can fight back. I think that he's somebody who can cause other whistleblowers to go out there, but at the same time, that means that he's someone who can be made an example of. You know, I am concerned that the government is saying we're not willing to give him a fair trial, right? His lawyer said if I get a jury trial with 12 people and it's a public trial, Snowden will come back. He's willing to go to jail, but he wants a trial. And Eric Holder was like, I'll give you an offer. We won't execute you. And we won't torture you. That was Eric Holder's promise to Edward Snowden. We won't execute you, and we won't torture you. But
could you believe that? That was incredible. That was incredible. I mean, sometimes they let their guards down, and you get to see just how how these people really are. All right, fair point on that. Yeah, you just remind me that was such a disturbing. It's like Obama making jokes about droning the Jonas Brothers or something, and it's like then you see him literally destroying a hospital. And what was it? The first Nobel Peace Prize Award winner to ever bomb another Nobel Peace Prize Award winner.
It's funny you mentioned that Obama quote. There were the night before the Million Mask March. There's an anon named Steve Grant who makes rap music about Anonymous, and he had this rap song that remixed Obama saying 2 words, drone strike. And then it was like 2 words, drone strike, 2 words, drone strike. And then he gets into his rap saying how he's fighting the drones and all that kind of stuff. But
have you heard the new Muse album by chance? Have you heard the new Muse album called Drones?
No, I have not.
They have a
Muse as in Huey Lewis and the News?
Muse, like she is my muse for writing poetry.
Oh, Muse. Oh, I understand.
Yeah, Matt Bellamy and those guys.
No, I have not heard the album though.
I'll tell you what. Another thing, if you want to check it out, check out their lyrics. Check it out. It's really about the military-industrial complex. They have this whole quote from JFK. The song's called JFK. It's a speech, and then the dirty guitar comes in, and yeah, like they did a previous album. I think it was a concept album based on Orwell's 1984. Really good stuff. You might get a kick out of it. Okay, so then in wrapping this up, Mr. Ford Fischer, I want to ask you, when you mentioned neckbeards earlier, what the heck did you mean by neckbeards? We just mean slovenly humans, slovenly Americans? What did neckbeards represent?
Sure. Okay, so neckbeards, when I said neckbeards, I was saying that they are breaking the stereotype that they are neckbeards. I was not calling them neckbeards. I do want to go on the record with that. I think
That'll be my title for this episode. Ford Fischer officially on the record about neckbeards. More at 11.
On the record, they're not neckbeards. So the neckbeard is the stereotype of people who are really politically turbulent or like engaged online. The kind of people who fight with everybody online, who pick fights. Maybe they're libertarians, maybe they're socialists. It doesn't really matter. It's the stereotype of people who are just super involved online, and then they don't actually get out there and do anything. And then the actual literal neckbeard is the idea that these are like, young men who actually don't like shave because they care so little about their appearance, probably because, and then the other stereotype is because they like live in their parents' house and they never talk to anybody.
Eating Cheetos, living in the basement at mom's place. Like okay. No, I made it.
And what I was saying was that that's a false stereotype, and then as we see the actual diversity of age, politics, race, color, gender, that's not who Anonymous represents or is made up of.
Awesome. Thank you for clarifying that. That was funny. All right, Ford, in the last 30 seconds here, tell everybody where they can find you, stay more engaged with all the stuff that you're up to, buddy.
Sure. So, again, my name is Ford Fischer, at Ford Fischer, Fischer, news2share.com, news, the number 2, share.com. That's also on Facebook. On Twitter, it's at news_2_share. And I would give the sort of special thanks to the other people who were with me at the Million Mask March, included Trey Yinks, who co-founded News2Share and is a news director with me, and Alejandro Alvarez, who was a photographer there, who was our associate producer of social media, and we also had with us our intern, Alec Rhodes. And so I would give a special thanks to all of those guys live on air here.
Excellent. Well, hey, man, thanks for joining us. Thanks for kind of breaking down what your experience was like over there. We appreciate it. And tell you what, we'll do this again real soon. We appreciate your time as always, buddy.
Yep, you got it.
All right, there he goes, everybody. Ford Fischer, check him out online. He's actually really interesting. I love his commentary. He's hilarious on Facebook, so find him over there. But anyhow, for everybody there out there at the TNAM Radio Network, I appreciate you. Subscribe, youtube.com/The New American Media, on Twitter at American_media_, do the Facebook search and all that jazz. So, I appreciate you. I love you. We'll talk again soon. Peace, everybody.
Hi, everybody. You're listening to Agree to Disagree with Brian Engelman, and this is John B. Wells reminding you that not only is Brian Engelman a cool guy, and not only is the newamericanmedia.com a very cool platform, but here's a cool idea for you, too. Are you alone? Not really. Do you like dogs? Do you like cats? You do. Of course you do. Everybody does. One or the other, maybe even both. You know, there are a lot of dogs and cats that are at shelters right now, and if somebody doesn't take them home, they're going to wind up euthanized. That's a nice way of saying they're going to be killed, because there's simply not enough room. I guarantee it, the best dogs and the best cats, the best pets, come from shelters. There's something about dogs and cats. They know. They know where they are. You walk through one of them, and certainly at least one is going to look at you and go, I wish you'd take me home. I'm in hell. Please take me out of here. It'll be the best thing that you ever did for your soul. You'll feel good about it. And not only that, but you have a friend for life. Doesn't matter if you got money, you don't have money. Well, it doesn't make any difference to a dog or cat. All they need is the sound of your voice and maybe even the stroke of your hand, and they're fine. Maybe a little food every once in a while. The sweetest sound that those pets ever hear is your voice. Think it over and adopt a cat or a dog from a local shelter today. I'm telling you, you'll be glad you did.